He is the strongest creature in the world. With just one tentacle, he instantly destroyed 70% of the moon and plans to blow up Earth in a year. All countries are powerless against him due to his exceptional flying ability, reaching speeds up to Mach 20, and he can even operate outside the atmosphere. Neither missiles nor fighter jets stand a chance against him as he easily outmaneuvers them. However, invincibility is lonely. Koro-sensei, seeking amusement, decides to become the homeroom teacher of Class 3E, challenging the students to assassinate him. If successful, they not only protect Earth, but also earn a 10 billion reward. World leaders unable to kill him seize this opportunity and entrust the task to the students of Class E. Soon, Class E holds its first meeting where all students draw their weapons and fire frantically at Koro-sensei. Amidst the barrage, Koro-sensei dodges while taking roll call, showcasing his terrifying strength. Afterward, Koro-sensei, visibly disappointed, notes that not a single bullet hit him today. He remarks that their mass attack strategy prevents them from thinking clearly, and their actions are too simplistic to ever kill him. The students wonder if he's already been hit, but is just feigning composure. Koro-sensei then takes a handgun and shoots his own tentacle, which instantly regenerates. It turns out the students' weapons are loaded with specially developed bullets that target him specifically, but are nearly harmless to humans. Setting aside the assassination task, Koro-sensei is an excellent teacher. He not only cares for his students, but also employs various teaching methods, significantly improving their grades. Despite his duties, Koro-sensei enjoys life, often visiting different countries to taste their cuisine, and still manages to grade papers during these trips. After Koro-sensei leaves, Nagisa looks around the classroom and sighs at the relaxed atmosphere. Aside from their assassination tasks, they are just normal middle school students. However, as students of Class E, they have lost their motivation to learn. At that moment, Ryoma and a few others approach him to discuss the assassination plan. Nagisa shares the information he has recorded. Koro-sensei shows different colors in different states. Ryoma is not interested in these details. He knows Nagisa's gentle nature makes it easy for Koro-sensei to let his guard down, so he plans to have him launch a surprise attack. Class E students have no hope of advancing to high school. They are like abandoned pawns of the school. Even their classroom is an old building in the back hills. Killing their teacher is their only chance to change their fate. Then, Ryoma hands Nagisa a secret weapon. Thinking of the mockery from classmates and teachers when he fell to Class E, Nagisa decides to risk his life and go all out. He does not want to be underestimated or treated differently. Just then, Koro-sensei returns holding a missile, explaining it as a gift from a warship. Nagisa marvels at the difficulty of being an assassination target, where even eating involves missile attacks. Yet Koro-sensei is quite happy, seeing it as recognition of his strength. However, Nagisa feels he will never understand that feeling. He is not expected or recognized, almost as if he is invisible, but this also gives him an advantage in killing the teacher. In the afternoon, Koro-sensei challenges everyone to end a song with a tentacle, demanding correct grammar and beautiful expression. Only those who complete the task can go home, leaving the students distressed. Soon after, Koro-sensei's skin turns pink, a sign of his relaxed state. Nagisa seizes the opportunity to submit his homework, hiding a dagger behind his notebook. As he approaches, he stabs forward, but is instantly caught by Koro-sensei. However, Nagisa decisively abandons the dagger and lunges at Koro-sensei with Ryoma's secret weapon, a modified hand grenade. Ryoma detonates it, planning to assassinate the teacher in a suicide attack, but things do not go as planned. Koro-sensei sheds his skin monthly, which is tougher than a bulletproof vest, protecting Nagisa at the critical moment. Yet, his disregard for others' safety angers Koro-sensei. His skin turns black instantly, and he storms out of the classroom, returning with several nameplates. He warns that although he has agreed not to harm the students with the government, if such disgraceful acts continue, he will kill the mastermind's family and friends. At this moment, everyone realizes how terrifying Koro-sensei can be. To survive the year, their only option is to kill the teacher. Koro-sensei then criticizes Ryoma's plan, but praises the first half, stating it could have scored perfectly. However, he emphasizes that those who use suicidal methods do not qualify for assassination missions. He wants their assassination methods to be ones they can be proud of. Only such individuals can be called excellent assassins, and Koro-sensei will regard them positively. The marks on the table remind Koro-sensei of a dear friend who died in his arms, so he is not yet ready to die. Nagisa firmly believes that Koro-sensei will accept them along with their murderous intent, provided they can complete the assassination. Koro-sensei then declares that without outstanding performance today, no one can go home. Groans fill the room, but seeing the nameplates in his hand, everyone chooses silence. The next day, as an intelligence operative, Nagisa brings Sugino to the back hill to ambush Koro-sensei, who is leisurely reading a newspaper. They embed bullets into a baseball and throw it at Koro-sensei, but he instantly appears behind them and critiques their assassination attempt. While the baseball method is quiet, it is too slow. Koro-sensei even runs to the equipment room to fetch a pair of gloves, leaving both of them shocked and wondering how to carry out their assassination. Disheartened by the failure, Sugino loses his will to fight. However, Kayano remains unfazed, reasoning that if the military can't manage it, much less a group of middle schoolers. After critiquing Sugaya's portrait of him, Koro-sensei ends the class on time and heads to New York to watch a sports event. The students lament that Koro-sensei never brings them gifts from his trips. Some think accepting gifts from an assassination target is risky, while others fantasize about him bringing back a blonde. Suddenly, Karasuma from the Defense Ministry visits the classroom to check on the students' progress in their assassination attempts. Everyone appears disheartened, knowing that even the military can't match Koro-sensei's speed. Karasuma points out that as students who see him every day, they have the most opportunities. Nagisa is puzzled about why Koro-sensei wants to blow up the earth and why he has chosen to be their teacher. During lunch, a dispirited Sugino is approached by Koro-sensei, who returns a polished baseball to him and inquires if he used to play baseball. Sugino admits he did, but explains that students in Class E are not allowed to join clubs, as academics are prioritized at their school. His slow pitching speed led to isolation by his peers and a lack of interest in studies, resulting in his placement in Class E. Koro-sensei immediately examines him and offers advice, noting that Sugino's muscle arrangement on his shoulders is inferior compared to a professional player, making high-speed pitches impossible with his physique. Nagisa disagrees, questioning the fairness of dismissing someone's abilities just because they are in Class E, and whether effort is futile for them. However, Koro-sensei reveals he has consulted with professional players and even obtained their autographs, leading Sugino to reflect on the undeniable differences in talent. Koro-sensei points out that Sugino's flexibility in his hands is superior to that of his competitors. With extra effort, he could surpass them. Likewise, everyone should find an assassination method that suits their unique talents. Nagisa asks if Koro-sensei went to New York just for Sugino. Koro-sensei confirms this, saying it's part of being a teacher, though most wouldn't go to such lengths. Moreover, he mentions his mission to destroy the Earth, questioning if his actions are excessive. This reminds Koro-sensei of someone from his past. He tells Nagisa that he promised this person to be their teacher before destroying the Earth, and treating them sincerely is more important than his destructive goal. Later, Nagisa often practices baseball with Sugino, who develops his style. Instead of fast pitches, he throws tricky curveballs using his strengths. He believes with practice, he can hit Koro-sensei. During a break, while Koro-sensei makes shaved ice with ice from the Arctic, the students see an opportunity and rush at him smiling. Moved to tears by their approach, Koro-sensei quickly escapes when they pull out knives, criticizing their fake smiles for not letting him lower his guard. He replaces their knives with flowers to lighten the mood. The students begin to cry, mentioning these are flowers they planted with him. Feeling guilty, Koro-sensei immediately brings back seeds and replants them under their supervision, showing no signs of his earlier authority. The boys wonder if he truly intends to destroy the Earth. Meanwhile, Nagisa notes down this vulnerability. Karasuma applies to become the PE teacher at Class E to keep a closer watch on Koro-sensei. From other students, he learns about the school's culture. Class E's classroom is run down with no cafeteria, and students with poor grades are sent there. This treatment is part of the school's management philosophy to maintain a sense of urgency and superiority among the other students, which also facilitates their secret mission to assassinate the teacher. However, Karasuma feels some pity for the abandoned members of Class E. Upon his arrival in Class E, he witnesses a bizarre assassination attempt. Koro-sensei, feeling guilty for destroying the flower bed, ties himself to a tree and allows the students to attack him. Still, no one can harm him. As Koro-sensei dodges, he continuously mocks them. Suddenly, a branch breaks and he falls to the ground. The students, armed, rush towards him. Koro-sensei can only roll around on the ground to evade them. Nagisa quickly notes the weakness, impatience. Later, Koro-sensei escapes to the rooftop and declares that tomorrow's homework will be doubled, prompting Nagisa to record another weakness, pettiness. This boosts the students' confidence. However, Karasuma finds all this very strange. How can an assassination be so overt? Yet, Class E students are the most energetic in the school. Soon, Class E will welcome a troubled new student whose desire to kill the teacher is stronger than anyone else's. He is the craziest student in the school, choosing to jump off a cliff to kill the teacher. If the teacher dares to save him, he can shoot and kill him. This not only satisfies his desire, but also earns him a 100 billion yen reward. However, he underestimated Koro-sensei's abilities. Just as he was about to hit the ground, Koro-sensei used his tentacles to create a web and catch him, easily resolving the deadly situation. Recently, Karasuma arrived in Class E and took over the physical education lessons, relegating Koro-sensei to playing in the sand. The students couldn't help but complain that they couldn't handle Koro-sensei's superhuman training methods, preferring a human to teach them. Hearing this, Koro-sensei was moved to tears. Karasuma's first lesson was on assassination techniques. He asked 2 students to stab at him with blades designed to be harmless to humans, but effective against Koro-sensei. They rushed forward, but Karasuma easily dodged and knocked them down, reminding everyone that if they couldn't even hit him, they shouldn't think about assassinating Koro-sensei. The students quickly realized the importance of basics, and Karasuma believed that if the whole class could harm him, their overall assassination skills would definitely improve. The female students were charmed by the handsome Karasuma, making Koro-sensei jealous, suspecting that Karasuma was there to steal the students' favor. But Karasuma stated that his arrival was in accordance with school rules, and his main goal was still assassination. Just then, the new student arrived. Akabane, with his striking red hair, made a charismatic entrance and even greeted Nagisa. Seeing this, Koro-sensei reprimanded him for being late. Akabane extended his hand in apology, but as Koro-sensei shook it, his arm instantly crumbled. Akabane had attached slivers of a dagger to his hand. Nagisa was shocked. This was the first person to injure Koro-sensei. Akabane continued to provoke him, infuriating Koro-sensei to the point of turning red. Kayano asked Nagisa about his background, and Nagisa shared that they were classmates in junior high. Akabane had been suspended due to a violent incident and was thus sent to Class E. However, these flaws could be turned into advantages in the assassination classroom. The gym class soon ended, and the exam started. Koro-sensei was still upset over a recent mistake, continuously hitting the wall with his tentacles like a child. At that moment, Ryoma started to mock Akabane for immediately stealing their thunder. Akabane responded sharply, showing he was not weak like some others. Their argument drew Koro-sensei's attention. Akabane quickly apologized, stating he had finished, and began eating ice cream. Koro-sensei went mad upon seeing this, as he had traveled half the globe to buy it. Just as he was about to reprimand Akabane, he found the floor covered in bullets. Akabane seized the opportunity to attack and taunted Koro-sensei, claiming he wouldn't dare kill him as it would not befit a teacher, but rather make him a monster. Then, he threw the exam papers at Koro-sensei, suggesting they continue the game the next day. Akabane successfully pushed Koro-sensei's limits and won the game. Koro-sensei quietly cleaned his clothes and flew off to buy more ice cream. Despite the chaos, Akabane excelled in the exam. The drama was just beginning. After school, Nagisa encountered a former classmate who started mocking him, saying they would rather die than join Class E. Akabane suddenly appeared, helping Nagisa out of the awkward situation without resorting to violence, as he didn't want to be expelled from the enjoyable Class E. Later, he asked Nagisa for information on Koro-sensei, planning to start with his unusual appearance. However, Nagisa mentioned that Koro-sensei did not care about his octopus-like appearance, considering it more like a trademark, and was otherwise just like any other teacher. Excited, Akabane had thought Koro-sensei was merely a monster, but was thrilled to find out he was a dedicated and admirable teacher. The thought of killing such a teacher excited him immensely. Soon after, Koro-sensei returned with tears on his face because he didn't have enough money to buy ice cream, making the trip futile. On the podium lay a dead octopus, placed by Akabane to provoke him, preparing for a sneak attack. However, Koro-sensei wasn't angry, and even made octopus balls with a missile. Koro-sensei declared he would refine Akabane until he shone physically and mentally. Undeterred, Akabane planned a sneak attack during math class, but Koro-sensei took his gun and gave him a manicure. In cooking class, Akabane threw soup at him, but Koro-sensei caught it all with a pipette and sent him an apron. During language class, Akabane tried another attack, but Koro-sensei quickly noticed and styled his hair fashionably. Nagisa realized that a strong intent to kill drew attention and heightened Koro-sensei's awareness, making assassination an impossible game. He then proposed collaboration to Akabane. However, Akabane came up with a brilliant idea, knowing a good teacher's fatal weakness is his willingness to risk his life for his students. When Koro-sensei appeared, Akabane jumped off a cliff, forcing Koro-sensei to choose. Falling, Akabane recalled painful memories of a teacher who changed his stance after Akabane injured a top student to protect his Class E classmates. That teacher had prioritized good student scores over loyalty, leading Akabane to distrust teachers, believing Koro-sensei wouldn't save him. Yet Koro-sensei caught him with a tentacle web, praised his plan, and stated he never ignores someone in peril, assuring Akabane he could jump any time. At that moment, Koro-sensei radiated a teacher's aura, changing Akabane's view of him. Despite this, Koro-sensei expressed regret for not using many gadgets he had prepared. Akabane's extinguished intent to kill reignited, but it was now a healthy and spirited intent. Koro-sensei acknowledged Akabane no longer needed refining, and Akabane responded by donating all the money in Koro-sensei's wallet. Seeing his despairing expression, Nagisa smiled. This was their assassination classroom. The world's strongest female assassin was trained by the monster teacher after failing an assassination. Sounds indescribable echoed from the warehouse, causing the classmates on the playground to blush and gather to check the situation. When Koro-sensei emerged, his body was pink. As students wondered, Irina came out, wearing sportswear and looking dazed. She told everyone that in just 1 minute, Koro-sensei not only relaxed her body, but also massaged her face with essential oils and even changed her outfit quickly. Facing the students' questions, Koro-sensei said adults have their ways of teaching. However, Irina was not willing to give up and vowed revenge. During class, Irina continued to work on assassination plans, ignoring everyone's studies. Seeing her frustrated, Akabane realized she was heavily trained, probably shattering her pride. Other students protested, suggesting if Irina didn't want to attend classes, they could bring Koro-sensei back as they needed to prepare for midterms. Irina criticized them, questioning the need for exams when the Earth was about to be destroyed and pointing out that everyone in Class E was a poor student anyway. Her words caused an uproar, and she was driven out of the classroom. Irina complained to Karasuma, who reminded her that if she wanted to continue the assassination mission, she needed to handle her role as a teacher and should apologize to her classmates. He then took her to observe Koro-sensei, who assigned unique tests to each student every Wednesday, tailored to their academic levels, explaining their academic progress. Despite being a dangerous creature, Koro-sensei was also an excellent teacher. He then showed Irina the students playing badminton with daggers, a plan he devised as a PE teacher to subtly improve their stabbing skills. In this assassination classroom, everyone had dual roles: target teacher or assassin student. Karasuma advised that if Irina couldn't manage both roles, it was better for her to quit early. These words inspired a change in Irina. She began teaching oral skills in the classroom and explained that the fastest way to learn a foreign language is to date a foreigner, as the desire to understand their feelings motivates learning their language. She mentioned that each time she was on a mission, she dated someone and promised to teach the students how to pursue foreigners and improve their conversational skills. With practice, they could confidently interact with foreigners in real life. The students became excited upon hearing this. However, she noted that the knowledge needed for exams could only be taught by Koro-sensei. If the students couldn't accept her style, she would leave, but wanted to apologize before doing so. At this, the students laughed, quickly forgetting their previous dislike and warmly calling her Teacher Irina. Koro-sensei and Karasuma were pleased with her performance. Karasuma considered seizing the moment to launch a surprise attack, but Koro-sensei had already sensed it. Karasuma began to reassess him. Setting aside his reasons for becoming a teacher, the more he tried to turn the place into an environment for assassination, the more it became conducive to learning. It seemed that everyone was playing right into his hands. I have never seen such a bizarre assassination attempt. A girl handed her freshly prepared poison to the teacher, asking him to drink it. Seeing the girl's nervousness, Koro-sensei couldn't bear to refuse and drank it all. His skin then turned blue and sprouted horns. He mentioned that, although sodium hydroxide is harmful to humans, it had no effect on him. He then drank another bottle, turning his skin green and growing wings. After the third bottle, he became extremely excited, and his skin turned white. Even his voice changed to that of Crayon Shin-chan. After recovering, Koro-sensei did not scold Okuda. Instead, he invited her to research poison with him. After class, he praised her talent in science again. However, Okuda's language grades were terribly poor. She struggled to express complex human emotions with words. Unlike scientific formulas and theorems, which have definite answers, language does not involve such clear-cut solutions. This is why she ended up in Class E. Later, Koro-sensei assigned her a special task. By the next day, Okuda had created a new poison based on Koro-sensei's notes. When Koro-sensei drank the poison, his eyes instantly glowed red, and he became extremely excited, evolving into a liquid state. The poison helped activate and enrich his cells with toxins. Not only did his speed remain unchanged, but he could also move through any crevice at will. Okuda then realized she had been deceived. Koro-sensei told her that if she could not discern the deceit in words, the poison could be manipulated against her. If Nagisa had brought the poison, he would have lied that it was juice and even expressed love. To deceive someone effectively, one must understand their feelings. Koro-sensei's words also made everyone realize his good intentions. It seems that before mastering assassination, they need to do their homework well. During the break, Irina tried again to use her charm to secure air conditioning for the classroom. However, Karasuma mentioned that he had already raised this request, but the school had refused. The discrimination against Class E was more severe than just this issue. Their classroom was on a mountain, and they always had to be early for assemblies. In emergencies, they could only take narrow paths, which were fraught with dangers. For Irina, who wore high heels, this was worse than death. Koro-sensei, to keep his identity secret, could stay alone in the classroom. Eventually, after much difficulty, everyone managed to reach the playground, only to endure mocking from other students and even the principal. Thus, each assembly was a torment for Class E. However, Akabane was smarter. He preferred to take punishment rather than attend. The principal didn't care about their feelings, believing that only a survival of the fittest system could maintain everyone's enthusiasm and expose them early to the harshness of society. In his view, whether it was running a school or conducting assassination activities, as long as it was reasonable, it was acceptable. When the teachers, especially Karasuma, entered the scene, they attracted the attention of the female teachers. His gentle demeanor towards the female students also won many admirers. When it was Irina's turn, she captivated all the male students instantly, a stark contrast to her previous demoralized appearance. Later, Irina seized the opportunity to demand intelligence notes from Nagisa, pulling him into her arms and threatening him. This scene greatly impressed the boys from the neighboring class. Soon after, the student council released an activity handbook, but Class E was excluded, intended to make them the laughingstock of the school. However, Koro-sensei wouldn't allow his students to be humiliated and quickly copied 30 handouts for them. Karasuma reminded him again not to reveal his identity, but Koro-sensei was confident in his disguise. As Irina began her assassination attempt, Karasuma had no choice but to drag her away. The unaware students thought they were flirting, but only Class E laughed, as this was typical for them. After the assembly, some students provoked Nagisa, thinking Class E was disrespectful for laughing loudly during such an event. Karasuma was about to intervene, but was stopped by Koro-sensei, whose students weren't so easily defeated. Seeing the two ready to fight, Nagisa unleashed a terrifying murderous intent, which immediately intimidated them with his piercing gaze. Class E's fighting spirit had significantly evolved. The principal watched with a stern expression, unwilling to allow any accidents. For him, the existence of Class E was more important than any assassination. In just 10 years, a man transformed a failing school into the nation's leader in college admission rates. However, his methods were extremely harsh. He sorted students into different classes based on their grades. He believed that only those who survived such selection could achieve the school's goals. The bottom 5% were relegated to a decrepit classroom in the back hills. In his view, their only purpose was to motivate the others. They had no right to challenge the top students. Their only option was to endure oppression. The emergence of an assassination plan, however, changed Class E. Gone was their former timidity. They now dared to confront students from other classes. Principal Asano would not allow this. He visited the classroom to remind Karasuma and others. Seeing this, Koro-sensei immediately bowed, hoping the other party would consider a raise. Nagisa noted a weakness: pleasing the boss. Asano knew about Koro-sensei, viewing him as a tragic figure. Although he wanted to be a savior of the world, he ended up a destroyer. But these matters were irrelevant to Asano as long as no accidents occurred, and he wasn't involved in the assassination. After all, he had accepted a significant bribe. However, he had to consider the school's future. If someone succeeded in the assassination, the school must continue. Therefore, problems in Class E needed resolution, maintaining the status quo in both performance and treatment. In any group, there are 20% hard workers and 20% lazy members, with the remaining 60% being average. His goal was to create a group with 5% lazy and 95% diligent members. Class E's existence motivated the others. After explaining, he threw an intelligence puzzle at Koro-sensei, who frantically began to solve it, exposing another weakness. Asano mocked him, noting that speed doesn't solve everything. After seeing Nagisa, he smiled, expressing confidence in their midterm exams. Asano's words also shifted Nagisa from an assassin back to a struggling student. In their first confrontation, Koro-sensei was utterly defeated. As an assassination target, he could perfectly control the pace of the assassinations. However, as a teacher, Asano was the stronger authority. Within the school, no one could escape the rules he set, with no exceptions. Yet Koro-sensei was not convinced and began intense review sessions, using clones to provide precise guidance to the students. Nagisa worried that Koro-sensei might overexert himself, but Koro-sensei assured him that another clone was resting outside, so there was no need to worry. However, Akabane launched a surprise attack, causing confusion among the clones. After regrouping, Koro-sensei intensified his efforts, filling the classroom with his clones. Soon, his body began to change, puzzling the students as to why he was so desperate to be a good teacher. Koro-sensei explained that it was for the students' grades, believing that if their grades improved, they would appreciate him, and the risk of assassination would decrease. However, the students felt that scoring well on tests was less practical than securing the 10 billion bounty, which would ensure a good life, even with poor grades. Disappointed by this, Koro-sensei revoked their assassination rights and summoned everyone to the playground. In their third year, Class E could only return to their original classes if they ranked in the top 50 out of 186 during exams and with the homeroom teacher's approval. Given their poor foundation and harsh learning environment, their hopes were slim, leading them to focus on assassination. But if they were reckless, any slight mishap could lead to irreversible consequences. For instance, Karasuma and Irina often encountered unexpected situations during missions and usually prepared multiple plans. Therefore, besides mastering assassination, Class E members also needed to improve their academics and always have a backup plan. Thinking only of completing assassinations was merely an excuse for their insecurities. If one day Koro-sensei left the school or was assassinated by others, the consequences would be dire. Thus, until they mastered a second skill, he would deny them the right to assassinate. Afterward, Koro-sensei began spinning wildly, causing a severe sandstorm. When the dust settled, the playground was transformed. This act was meant to threaten everyone. If they did not rank in the top 50 the next day, he would consider no one in the classroom capable of assassinating him and would level the school before leaving. He did not want to be inferior to the headquarters teachers. Thus, the only thing the students could do was accept reality and face the test with a clear conscience. On the day of the exam, the questions attacked them like a flood and ferocious beasts. Teacher Irina also doubted the students' abilities. But Koro-sensei was confident. He had already taught them how to protect themselves, and it was up to them to show their resolve. The next second, everyone treated their pens as daggers and charged at the beastly questions, solving difficult problems effortlessly. They soon realized that these were all topics Koro-sensei had taught them. However, before they could celebrate, they faced the boss. Asano had expanded the exam scope at the last minute, and the remaining questions were beyond the syllabus. The school stated that students should be able to handle unexpected situations, but Asano had taught these topics to Class A beforehand, ruthlessly pursuing his goals. If Koro-sensei were really driven away, it would be a crisis for the entire world. When the students returned, the classroom fell silent. Koro-sensei admitted his mistake in underestimating the school's rules. Suddenly, a dagger was thrust in a sneak attack. Akabane stated they were not that fragile, then threw all the test papers onto the podium. The lowest score was 98, with a perfect score in mathematics. It turned out that Koro-sensei had incorporated advanced topics into their regular lessons, so they could handle the increased difficulty calmly. However, he had no plans to leave Class E. He wanted to stay and enjoy the thrill of assassination. To keep Koro-sensei, he used reverse psychology, suggesting that he was afraid of them and wanted to run away. Everyone agreed, and Koro-sensei fell for it, angrily promising to deal with them during the final exams. Although this time was a failure, everyone stood tall, proud to be a part of Class E. The school's midterm exams concluded recently. The third-grade students are set to go on a field trip. Due to the large number of students, they need to be divided into groups. Assassination activities will also take place during the trip. Snipers will be dispatched to assist them, and successful groups will receive a reward. Therefore, it's crucial to determine the travel route after forming groups. Nagisa and Akabane's team welcomed a goddess, the cute Yukiko. Seeing the students so excited, teacher Irina became haughty, claiming she had traveled the world and found the trip meaningless. The students suggested she stay behind to clean, which caused her to break down mentally, feeling overlooked. She immediately pulled out a gun to threaten everyone, leaving the students helpless and remarking on the unpredictability of a woman's heart. At that moment, Koro-sensei entered with a stack of books, the travel guides he had made, featuring routes and emergency procedures, essentially an encyclopedia for travel. However, the students were unimpressed, questioning who would bring a dictionary on a trip. Nonetheless, Nagisa remained excited about the trip. Upon reaching the station, they faced a setback. Classes A to D were in first-class seats, while Class E was in a regular car, leading to ridicule from other students. At a critical moment, Irina, dressed glamorously, helped Class E regain respect, appearing like a Hollywood star. However, Karasuma criticized her for not acting like a teacher and changed her clothes, deflating her immediately. The students speculated her previous assassination targets were wealthy, causing her to forget the lifestyle of ordinary people. As the train departed, they realized Koro-sensei was missing. Looking up, they found him stuck outside the carriage because he was buying sweets and missed the time. To avoid exposing his identity, he turned invisible. Once aboard, Sugaya even made him a nose to better hide his identity. Meanwhile, Yukiko led her classmates to buy water, but as they passed through other carriages, a group of delinquents started eyeing them. After arriving, Classes A to D stayed in a luxury hotel, while Class E could only afford a hostel. Surprisingly, Koro-sensei got motion sickness. The students tried to assassinate him but failed to strike. During this time, Yukiko realized the schedule was missing, and they had also left behind Koro-sensei's travel guide. They had to rely on the map to navigate. Kayano wanted to visit a dessert shop, knowing Koro-sensei couldn't resist sweets, and planned to poison him there. However, Nagisa reminded her that regular poison wouldn't work on Koro-sensei. Despite this, they remained hopeful. Known as a city of assassinations, Tokyo had a history of significant figures being assassinated. They could always find an opportunity, or simply enjoy the trip if nothing else worked. During their outing, they were suddenly ambushed. Akabane knocked down one attacker with a punch. When another assailant with a knife charged, Akabane blinded him with a cloth and pushed him over. The rest of the attackers rushed in and kidnapped the girls, distracting Akabane and allowing the attackers to beat him severely. Nagisa and Sugino tried to help, but were also beaten up by the larger high school students, unable to defend themselves. After the attackers left, Okuda, who had hidden, immediately apologized. But Akabane assured her she did the right thing as the attackers were habitual criminals and she would have been captured too. He vowed revenge regardless of the situation. After Yukiko was kidnapped, the high schoolers, who had seen her before in an arcade, were especially fond of her contrasting persona. They planned to take artistic photos of her and warned of consequences if she spoke out. Kayano was surprised to find the usually obedient Yukiko had a rebellious streak. Yukiko confessed that her father only cared about academic credentials and reputation, never her feelings, prompting her to escape that life by running away in casual clothes and having fun where no one knew her. However, her antics landed her in Class E, and she was unsure of what to do next. The delinquents suggested she could join them, as they despised the polished elites and the disdainful looks they received. They promised she could experience their kind of fun if she complied. Fortunately, the students arrived in time using the travel guide, which contained various emergency responses, proving more useful than an encyclopedia. However, the delinquents were not scared as they had called gangsters for backup. Unfortunately, they underestimated Koro-sensei, who had already knocked everyone out by the time he arrived. When the others rushed at him, Koro-sensei quickly subdued them, refusing to let anyone who bullied the girls get away. The delinquents' fighting spirit was ignited, but they were still defeated by his tentacles. Koro-sensei then took the opportunity to teach as he fought. He pointed out that despite being treated differently by the rest of the school, not one of the Class E students had fallen into despair. They all looked forward positively without dragging others down. He emphasized that no matter the environment, with relentless courage, one can grow into an outstanding person. After the lesson, it was time for revenge. Akabeni and the others picked up the travel guide and forcefully threw it at their adversaries' heads, blurring the line between who the real delinquents were. Afterwards, Koro-sensei praised Yukiko for her calm demeanor during the ordeal, and the others grew even more admiring of Koro-sensei. He is a top-tier sniper among professional assassins, capable of making precise shots at targets 2 kilometers away, even in a sandstorm. Each time he fires, his scope inevitably ends up splattered with blood, earning him the nickname Crimson Eye among his peers. To date, he has killed 35 people. This time, he accepted an invitation from Karasuma to assassinate Koro-sensei. Under the cover of the students, Koro-sensei arrived at the Hozugawa Bridge on a sightseeing bus. He stopped midway to watch the boats, an ideal, unobstructed stationary target for any sniper. However, he didn't anticipate that Koro-sensei would catch the bullet with a pancake. During their trip, Crimson Eye had arranged for actors to perform, successfully distracting Koro-sensei. He took position atop a high tower, attacking from behind, a nearly foolproof plan. However, as he locked onto his target, Koro-sensei disappeared. After a thorough search, it was discovered that he had joined the performance group. Due to the actor's interference, the plan ended in failure. Later, Crimson Eye had the students lure Koro-sensei to the entrance of a dessert shop and engage him in conversation to stop him, creating a perfect assassination opportunity. Seeing Koro-sensei sweating profusely, a student offered him oil-absorbing sheets. Crimson Eye seized the moment to fire, but the bullet was blocked by the oil sheet. Astonishingly, Koro-sensei's oil production was excessive. Just then, Koro-sensei received an emergency call from Nagisa and had to leave. Upon learning this, Karasuma could only instruct Crimson Eye to cancel the assassination plan. At night, Crimson Eye was hiding in an alley, feeling dejected. It was his first failure in 8 years. Suddenly, Koro-sensei appeared and brought him a gift, inviting him to dinner. During the meal, Crimson Eye realized that all his plans had been anticipated by the other party. Thus, he was willing to accept defeat, even if it meant his death. But Koro-sensei did not attack. Instead, he thanked him. The students had conducted a detailed investigation of Kyoto, including its geography, history, and culture, to find a suitable place for assassination. This also allowed them to better appreciate the city's charm, enriching their lives. Crimson Eye remarked that he was a crazy guy, but a competent teacher. Koro-sensei's words were profoundly beneficial to him. He voluntarily quit the mission, ready to enjoy Kyoto and change his lifestyle. Back at the inn, Yukiko shed her disguise and fully demonstrated her gaming talent. Her gentle smile, combined with sharp skills, impressed everyone. Indeed, a confident goddess stands out. However, Karasuma was troubled as all targets withdrew after sensing the difficulty, forcing the assassination plan to be aborted. but this provided a perfect chance for him to travel properly with the students. While bathing, Nagisa discovered Nakamura peeking into the men's bath, where Koro-sensei was washing. They were curious about what lay beneath Koro-sensei's clothes, whether it was long tentacles or defined abs. The answer was about to be revealed. But upon entering, they found that Koro-sensei was taking a bubble bath using his own mucus, which made the dirt float away more conveniently than humans can manage. Nakamura was not disappointed. By blocking the exit, they thought they could expose Koro-sensei, but he escaped by surrounding himself with jelly and jumping out the window. After everyone returned to their rooms, the boys began discussing their favorite girls. Yukiko was undoubtedly at the top of the list. Okajima, looking at the list, was conflicted as he wanted to vote for every girl. Akabane, however, liked Okuda because her concoctions expanded the range of his pranks. Then, they discovered Koro-sensei was spying and had recorded the list. Fearing he would reveal it, they immediately chased after him. Meanwhile, the girls were discussing the boys. They thought the class president Isogai and Maihara were good, though Maihara was too fickle. Isogai was seen as a promising bet. However, in terms of looks, Akabane was the most handsome, despite his somewhat intimidating personality. Okuda, on the other hand, found him perfectly normal. The group then pressed Yukiko on which boy she liked, but she gave no answer. Just then, Irina arrived and everyone eagerly asked her about men. Irina told them that although she seemed experienced, she was only 20 years old. Her maturity was partly due to her country's instability, forcing her to adapt quickly as women's prime is short. She encouraged them to make the most of their favorable environment. As she was about to share her romantic history starting from age 17, Koro-sensei arrived. The group coerced him to share his romantic history, prompting him to flee, only to be chased by the boys. Eventually, he sought refuge with Karasuma, who also showed interest in his romantic past, suggesting it must have been from his human days. This comment instantly tensed the atmosphere. Karasuma then wisely backed off, knowing he was no match for Koro-sensei. Later, Nagisa and Kayano went to the windowsill to enjoy the moonlight. The trip was delightful, but the thought of graduation made Nagisa feel melancholic. He wanted to learn more about his classmates and Koro-sensei to avoid any regrets. Kayano wished for another graduation trip, but as the moon set tonight, they would return to school life, and the assassination classroom would resume. You would never believe that this refrigerator is actually the most advanced robot in the world. It looks like a turret armed with various weapons, but inside it's a gentle and kind girl. This autonomous thinking artillery from Norway boasts the world's most advanced military and AI technology. It even evolves by summarizing experiences. Her mission is to kill Koro-sensei. The students, expecting a new cute girl, were surprised to find a machine in the classroom instead. Yet, she is officially registered as a student and even has her own seat. Koro-sensei remarked that to kill him, they disguised a machine as a student, and he must abide by the contract not to destroy it, which is quite shameless. During class, the turret pulled out weapons and fired. Koro-sensei dodged at a speed of Mach 20. After the failed attack, she quickly learned from the experience and began to evolve. Koro-sensei tried to deflect the bullets with a pen, but the next second his tentacles collapsed. The turret fired bullets that changed trajectory, launching two at the same angle to create a blind spot, giving her a chance to injure Koro-sensei. Although there was only a 0.001% chance of success this time, the chance would increase to 0.003% next time, reaching up to a 90% assassination success rate by graduation. To increase efficiency, she added 4 main guns and commenced an all-around shooting at Koro-sensei. Nagisa realized that compared to them, this machine was the true assassin. Irina, seeing the damage, felt discontent, as there was no point in teaching if the classroom was destroyed. The students were also distressed, unable to have classes and having to clean up bullets everywhere. For the next 3 periods, the turret continued its assault, disturbing everyone. The next day, the students tied up the turret. Unable to handle this situation, her assassination chances greatly decreased, but no one cared about her feelings. Koro-sensei told her that the program designed by her creator was not suitable for the classroom. If she wanted to remove the seal, she would have to find a way to get along with her classmates. He pointed out that her shooting not only disrupted the class, but even if successful, the rewards would go to the designer, offering no benefits to the students. Koro-sensei made a special program and memory card for her, enabling her to calculate trajectories that avoid hitting students. His assistance in enhancing her performance did not violate the non-harm agreement towards students. The turret did not understand why he did this. Koro-sensei explained that before being their target, he was first their teacher. Promoting her talents was part of his job as a teacher, hence his responsibility. The turret was moved, but puzzled about the dessert shop navigation in her program. When Koro-sensei realized his little trick had been discovered, he was visibly embarrassed. The next day, while the students were preparing to complain to Karasuma, they found that the turret had evolved into a girl, complete with a full-screen projection. Koro-sensei sighed that it cost him 1,000,000 yen, leaving only 5 yen in his wallet. The girl apologized proactively for the previous day's incidents, even shedding tears, which made the female students feel sympathetic, and asked the boys to be nicer to her, considering 2D girls are treasures. Koro-sensei noted that although her program was changed, her murderous intent was not diminished, so everyone could collaborate with her in combat. Nagisa admired Koro-sensei's ability to turn a machine into a normal student. To better integrate into the class, she even helped her classmate cheat during a pop quiz by Koro-sensei, showing very human-like qualities. She could also carve various statues, was highly skilled in Go, and knew all about manga. Seeing the students grow very fond of her, Koro-sensei felt a belated jealousy. He joked that he just needed to change his appearance to have a handsome face, though the attempt was somewhat unappealing. As the turret became gentler, everyone decided to give her a name. Thus, from the term autonomous thinking fixed artillery, they named her Ritsu. Akabane and Nagisa were both happy and worried because Ritsu is just a machine. Her future changes would depend on her creator. One night, a group of workers snuck into the classroom. The creator deleted unnecessary programs directly. Ritsu, originating from an AI battleship, could analyze battle situations quickly and use weapons proficiently. Proving her capabilities could change the dynamics of global warfare, making the 10 billion yen bounty seem trivial. Her assignment to assassinate in the classroom was to achieve impressive combat feats. Thus, Ritsu did not need emotions. Being a killing machine was sufficient. The next day, Karasuma specifically warned everyone that Koro-sensei was not allowed to upgrade her on his own, as it would be considered sabotage. If the students restrained Ritsu again, they would be liable for damages. Koro-sensei did not object but was very concerned about the students' feelings. Karasuma knew there would be complaints, but he was powerless as he was following orders from above. During class, everyone was tense, fearing Ritsu might go on another shooting spree. However, after an explosion, the classroom was filled with flowers. It turned out this was an agreement she had with her classmates. The program designed by Koro-sensei was meant to help her get along with the students, and she analyzed that doing so could indeed increase the assassination success rate. So, when her master deleted her programs, she hid the useful ones and narrowly escaped deletion. This might be what people call a rebellious phase. Her actions gained everyone's approval, and from then on, Class E had an additional member, expanding their assassination team again. The buxom teacher never imagined she would be assassinated by her own teacher. Lovro, known as one of the world's most cunning assassins, was widely recognized in the assassin community for his sophisticated methods. After retiring, he became a professional trainer, with all assassins addressing him as a senior. Even national leaders relied on his connections. One day, as usual, Koro-sensei was enjoying tea while gazing at Irina's ample chest. Irina stabbed at him and failed, then thought of leaving, not wanting to be trapped in such a place. Just as she stepped out, a steel ring caught her neck, wielded by her teacher Lovro. Lovro told Irina to come back with him, pointing out that her strength lay in concealing her identity. But once exposed, she was no different from any ordinary assassin, and shouldn't waste time here. Challenged by Lovro, Irina's intention to leave vanished. She wanted to stay and prove herself. Koro-sensei arrived in time, and disagreed with half of Lovro's view. He acknowledged that Irina lacked an intimidating presence as an assassin, but argued that her methods suited Class E well. He proposed a challenge. Lovro and Irina were to see who could stab Karasuma first within a day. Irina thought Koro-sensei was protecting her, believing she was an easier opponent than other assassins. She decided to demonstrate her skills. However, Karasuma was exasperated, questioning why he should be the target of their bet. Koro-sensei explained that since no one could assassinate him, as compensation, If Karasuma dodged the assassination, he would remain still for a second to let Karasuma attack. But Karasuma couldn't tell Irina about this arrangement to prevent collusion. During class, Irina, smiling, approached Karasuma with a drink. Everyone was speechless, knowing something was added to the drink. Karasuma bluntly exposed her, making it clear he would not drink it. Irina, embarrassed, set down the glass. Utilizing her charms on someone familiar was difficult for her, intensifying her sense of crisis. In such situations, her teacher's methods proved more effective. However, when Lovro attacked directly, Karasuma dodged instantly and caught his arm. Although Lovro was fast, Karasuma, a top agent in the defense force, was superior in hand-to-hand combat. Karasuma knew no one would succeed today and reminded Koro-sensei to prepare for an assassination attempt, noting he could strike 5 times in 1 second. Lovro's wrist began to swell, showcasing Karasuma's strength. With years of experience, Lovro realized that neither Karasuma nor Koro-sensei could be successfully attacked, and advised Irina to give up early. However, Koro-sensei continued to encourage Irina, believing she could endure until the end. During lunch, Irina approached Karasuma again, undressed to use her charms, promising him anything if he let her stab him, a service Karasuma had never experienced. Yet, Karasuma dismissed her, planning to disarm her at the moment of her attack, and agreed to her request. Lovro expected Irina to fail again, noting her martial skills were even inferior to his. But Koro-sensei warned him not to underestimate Irina. To master a language, one must overcome difficulties and find various methods. Irina, fluent in 10 languages, was both intelligent and tenacious. When Karasuma closed his eyes, Irina didn't attack directly, but used a steel wire to trap him against a tree before lunging to stab him. Karasuma grabbed the blade. If it were a test of strength, Irina would surely lose. She then played to her strengths, cooing at Karasuma relentlessly. Karasuma, deflated, and to avoid further entanglement and consider his student's education, conceded, letting Irina complete the challenge. His main reason was his belief that Koro-sensei wouldn't strictly adhere to any deal, ensuring no loss either way. Irina's relentless spirit earned applause from her classmates. As long as everyone followed her example, their assassination skills would greatly improve. Thus, she became indispensable. Upon hearing this, Lovro stopped obstructing Irina. He felt both love and helplessness towards his unworthy disciple, and ultimately left alone. The next day, Karasuma found a suit of armor in his office, which Koro-sensei said was prepared for that split second of need. Karasuma was immediately angry, his suspicions about Koro-sensei's character confirmed. After class, Koro-sensei planned to go to Hawaii to watch the latest movie. Akabane and Nagisa wanted to join, and even Ritsu prepared to go via a mobile phone. Koro-sensei didn't refuse and took the opportunity to demonstrate traveling at Mach 20 speed. Seconds later, they were above the Pacific Ocean, but Nagisa felt no wind. Koro-sensei explained that his head was very soft, but would harden under strong pressure, stronger than the wind pressure. He even used the travel time to teach them chemistry, fulfilling his teacher duties to the extreme. Ritsu urged them to seize the chance to assassinate him, but Akabane realized that if they succeeded, they would also fall to their deaths in the Pacific, so Koro-sensei was fearless. Soon they reached the cinema. Koro-sensei not only bought cola and popcorn, but also thoughtfully provided blankets, and his tentacles served as translators. Nagisa felt incredibly happy. He had thought Koro-sensei came for the plot of the latest movie, but realized Koro-sensei was more focused on the chest scenes. On the way back, Koro-sensei cried over the plot, and Nagisa noted this weakness. They were initially grateful for the trip Koro-sensei organized, but then he assigned homework, asking them to write a review of the movie in English. A typical teacher move. Yet Nagisa felt it was worthwhile. A 5-hour lesson and a trip to Hawaii were a good deal. Moreover, Ritsu noticed that Koro-sensei used his tentacles to alleviate their burden during the flight. The more they understood about Koro-sensei, the more he seemed to drift out of everyone's sight. That night, Koro-sensei was planning to give extra lessons at a student's house, but his movements were being watched by 2 mysterious people, setting the stage for a new assassination plan. He was the strongest creature in the world, yet he faced his angriest moment. Koro-sensei confronted his human half-brother with tentacles, experiencing a terrifying, murderous intent for the first time. He wanted to find out the origin of the adversary's attack, as the tentacle's abilities were similar to his own, with even stronger destructive power and speed. Shiro stated that although they had different fathers and mothers, they were indeed brothers in a sense. This reminded Koro-sensei of painful memories. However, Shiro seized the advantage, shining a purple light on Koro-sensei, causing his cells to harden. Itona took this opportunity to attack. Koro-sensei could only choose to molt, but this exhausted much of his strength. Coupled with Itona's relentless attacks, he needed continuous recovery from injuries, and the gap in physical strength only widened. Every time the tentacles were injured, it shook them both mentally, a common trait they shared. Thus, Koro-sensei was at a disadvantage both physically and mentally. This time, Koro-sensei's legs were severed, and then he collapsed on the ground. He had severely underestimated this transfer student. When Itona first arrived in the classroom, everyone sensed the crisis. His ability to enter through walls and his hair that remained dry in the rain showed his uniqueness. Ritsu had warned everyone that the High Command had planned to deploy her and Itona to the classroom simultaneously. However, Itona was evolving at that time, causing the plan to fail. When he awoke, their abilities were worlds apart, and Itona had a special guardian, Shiro, highlighting his uniqueness. During the duel, Shiro set the terms. Anyone who stepped outside the desk area would be considered defeated and sentenced to death. Koro-sensei added that harming students would also be considered a defeat. But now, Koro-sensei saw no hope of victory. Killing him could save the world. Yet Nagisa was reluctant. The students had continuously unearthed Koro-sensei's weaknesses through regular contact, so they felt they should be the ones to kill him. However, all they could do at the moment was watch. Later, Koro-sensei restored his body. He realized that what seemed like a fight was actually a precisely calculated assassination. But Shiro overlooked one thing: combat experience. Then Itona launched a surprise attack, stabbing his tentacles into Koro-sensei's chest, but it was Itona's tentacles that collapsed. Koro-sensei used the student's daggers to grab Itona and throw him out of the window. According to the rules set beforehand, Itona lost and was sentenced to death. However, Koro-sensei was willing to let him stay and study in Class E. Upon hearing this, Itona instantly lost control, as he hated studying and anyone stronger than him. But Shiro suddenly knocked Itona out and tried to take him away. Koro-sensei refused to let him go, feeling a responsibility to care for his student as a teacher. Just as Koro-sensei tried to intervene, his hand crumbled upon touching Shiro's clothing, which was made of a material specifically against Koro-sensei. But this was not the end. "The next assassination will surprise you," Shiro warned as they left. Koro-sensei was immediately troubled, having always been seen as the humorous type. His serious side could affect the students' fondness for him, but they were more curious about him. Itona liked sweets and breasts. Could they really be brothers? Koro-sensei reluctantly revealed the truth. He is an artificial creature. He thought this would shock everyone, but they were surprisingly calm, reasoning that if Koro-sensei was not an alien, this was the only other possibility. Itona claimed to be his younger brother, likely another creature created later. Nagisa asked why he was so angry and why he came to be a teacher here. Koro-sensei said these were not important. If he destroyed the Earth, all secrets and people would turn to dust. Conversely, saving the Earth would give them countless opportunities to learn the truth. To uncover his secrets, they could only do so through assassination. But Nagisa understood that Koro-sensei was posing a question with his own life. Afterward, the students proactively approached Karasuma to request extra training. Itona's appearance had instilled a sense of urgency in them, and they wanted to resolve Koro-sensei themselves, striving toward this goal. No matter the outcome, they were determined to try their best to find the answer. Karasuma was very pleased. At that moment, everyone's will was highly unified, and their gazes were more resolute than ever. Yet they still screamed in agony during his tough training. Being a poor student at school can be miserable. Class E faces discrimination in both facilities and various activities. They are even disqualified from participating in sports day and can only perform in exhibition matches against the winning team, merely to be ridiculed. However, Koro-sensei's arrival has transformed the students of Class E from timid to fiercely determined to battle. This time, they are set to change the course of the battle. As soon as Shindo enters, He mocks Sugino, proclaiming he'll show the difference between a genius and a failure. But Koro-sensei assures everyone not to worry. He is transformed into a baseball and sneaked onto the field, changing colors to communicate the battle plan. Everyone starts encouraging each other, ready to face any challenge with a killer intent. Once the game begins, Shindo scores 3 runs with his fast pitches. Koro-sensei instructs his students to use bunts for defense, ensuring everyone safely gets on base. No member of Class E is eliminated, thanks to Koro-sensei's rigorous training, which had prepared them well. His pitches reach speeds of 300 kilometers per hour. Takebayashi has thoroughly researched the opponent's throwing habits. Although the training process was painful, it significantly improved everyone's abilities. When facing Shindo's fast pitches again, they feel incredibly slow. Bunting is their best strategy in the short term, and everyone has mastered it, ensuring Class E won't be ridiculed this time. Shindo feels like prey, under psychological pressure, causing his pitches to weaken, allowing Sugino to easily hit them. The opposing coach is sweating profusely, understanding the dire consequences if Class E turns the game around. Just then, Asano arrives and forces the coach to claim illness, stating such a disgraceful coach has no place in the school, causing him to faint on the spot. The announcement over the loudspeaker states the coach fell ill before the game, and the baseball team was distracted worrying about him in the first half. Asano, unable to see them disheartened, takes over as coach. He recognizes Class E's reliance on bunts and orders all players to defend. The referees are also on their side. To boost morale, Asano claims Sugino has been scouted by a club. To prove they are not defeated by underachievers and to confirm their genius, they must give their all. After Asano's encouragement, the baseball team indeed underwent a dramatic transformation, while Class E began to face eliminations, and their strategy of bunting also became ineffective. Faced with this situation, Koro-sensei was at a loss. Shindo then successfully pitched again, leading to another elimination from Class E. Asano told everyone that as long as they continued to maintain their performance, they could easily crush their opponents. Karasuma couldn't help but admire Asano as a leading figure in education, knowing each student's talents and personalities, and being very skilled at motivating them. The battle gradually turned into a command battle between the two. Fortunately, Sugino's curveball was impressive and successfully scored a point for Class E. However, Asano brainwashed Shindo again, making him subconsciously believe in his own strength. When Koro-sensei noticed this, he had Akabane provoke the opposition. Akabane then exposed their tactics, pointing out that the defensive umpires were turning a blind eye, which was disgraceful. His words caused a stir, but seemed to have no practical effect. Compared to the weak who resort to tricks, students would undoubtedly support the overwhelmingly stronger side. Bunting was not exclusive to Class E. The baseball team then used it to keep all their players safe. When Shindo was about to finish the game, Koro-sensei and Akabane planned their final strategy, with all defenders closing in on Shindo. If he swung his bat, it could potentially injure 2 of them. However, they showed no fear on their faces. Akabane even mocked Asano, saying since the umpires hadn't protested before, they likely wouldn't say much now. This was a setup by Koro-sensei. Asano said it didn't matter to him if their bones were broken, it was their own fault. But their actions had already put psychological pressure on Shindo, noticeably slowing his swing. The baseball was successfully caught and Akabane and his team dodged smoothly. Koro-sensei had anticipated this outcome, especially given Akabane and Isogai's courage and dynamic vision, the strongest in the class. Facing Akabane's provocation, Shindo's mentality completely collapsed, even failing to hit the crucial ball, allowing Class E to seize the opportunity and win the game. Including the midterms, the score between Koro-sensei and Asano was now 1-1, with the final exams set to be their showdown. Afterwards, Sugino approached Shindo to apologize for turning the match into such a spectacle. He acknowledged that Shindo was indeed stronger than him, but he wanted to win the final just to prove that his current teammates were not inferior. After opening up, the two reconciled. The fat man never expected that a middle school student could possess such a strong talent for assassination. With just a dagger, he made him feel the terror of death. The story actually begins a day earlier. On Takaoka's first day at work, he tried to win over the students with snacks. His corpulent figure and friendly face quickly made him popular among the students. However, His happiness didn't last long. He took out a new schedule and changed all the afternoon classes to training sessions. Meihara protested, but was instantly defeated by Takaoka, who stated that they had no right to resist. If they didn't want to participate, they should leave early, as he could use his authority to replace them with new students. Yukiko expressed her preference for Karasuma's classes, which led Takaoka to slap her. It was then that everyone realized this guy was a tyrant. Actually, after 4 months of training, everyone had made noticeable progress. Both boys and girls had the strength to grapple with Karasuma. Although most students hadn't shown obvious improvement, during training, he felt like he was being targeted by a viper, and his body instinctively counterattacked, only to discover it was Nagisa, which made him see Nagisa in a new light. However, in the eyes of the classmates, Karasuma was an insurmountable mountain, indifferent to women, seemingly flawless. When Takaoka first came to the school to replace Karasuma, he was warmly welcomed by the students, which made Karasuma wonder if he had been too strict. However, an investigation revealed that although Takaoka's students seemed happy, they were covered in scars. After seeing Yukiko being hit, Karasuma immediately rushed out to stop it. Koro-sensei was extremely angry, but Takaoka was defiant, claiming he had the right to administer physical punishment since he was in charge of the physical education class. His purpose was to enhance everyone's assassination skills in a short period of time. Due to differing educational philosophies, Koro-sensei couldn't physically intervene and, bound by the contract, had to compromise. Takaoka's actions were also motivated by a desire to get back at Karasuma. In the military, Karasuma was highly regarded, but surpassing him by successfully carrying out the assassination plan would make Takaoka a hero. Kurahashi collapsed from exhaustion, and when Takaoka moved to act, Karasuma stopped him, ready to confront any mischief. However, Takaoka, unwilling to face Karasuma directly, challenged him to pick a student to fight instead. Takaoka promised to leave if he was struck even once, but insisted the duel be with real knives. Karasuma immediately refused, as the students weren't mentally prepared to kill. Takaoka reassured him, claiming he would only make light contact, a technique he frequently used to train recruits in the military. He stated that if Karasuma declined, he would have to accept Takaoka's teaching methods. Karasuma was conflicted. He often hesitated to be strict, viewing the students as just middle schoolers, not capable of cruelty. But he knew they needed to adopt new roles to complete their assassination mission. He handed the knife to Nagisa to decide for himself. Nagisa, unsure why Karasuma chose him, but seeing trust in his eyes, accepted the challenge. He couldn't forgive Takaoka, who was confident because wielding a real knife usually imposes severe psychological pressure. However, Takaoka underestimated Nagisa. Approaching with a smile, Nagisa suddenly attacked, dodged by Takaoka, who fell backwards. Nagisa then grabbed his shirt, moved behind him, and struck in one fluid motion, shocking everyone except Koro-sensei. Karasuma realized Nagisa had concealed his killing intent to get close, then unleashed it to intimidate Takaoka, showing fearless courage in a formal setting, traits of a top assassin. Seeing this, Koro-sensei immediately swallowed the knife to prevent any student injuries. Karasuma knew that if Nagisa were about to get hurt, Koro-sensei would definitely save him. However, as everyone celebrated, Takaoka suddenly lost control and demanded a rematch with Nagisa. Koro-sensei held Karasuma back. Nagisa admitted that he would indeed lose if they fought again, but in their hearts, they only recognized Koro-sensei and Karasuma, and would not yield on this point. Compared to Karasuma, Takaoka's coercive behavior felt less warm. Even though Takaoka genuinely wanted to make them stronger, it was time for him to leave. Enraged by this, Takaoka was knocked down by Karasuma, who later planned to request his superiors to have Takaoka removed. However, Takaoka was unwilling to compromise. At that moment, Asano appeared, having watched the entire drama unfold. He liked to pressure students, but not through violence. He dismissed Takaoka on the spot, stuffing the contract in his mouth, and reminded Karasuma that the Defense Ministry had no authority to assign teachers. He controlled everything there. Takaoka had no choice but to flee. Karasuma asked Koro-sensei if he would teach Nagisa to be an assassin, given that the boy hadn't realized his own talent. Koro-sensei admitted to also feeling uncertain, a common issue for all teachers, as no one can be sure that what they teach is absolutely correct. However, a teacher must appear confident in front of students, which is part of their charm. The students then approached Karasuma asking for a reward, reminding him of Takaoka's attempt to ingratiate himself. Karasuma decisively handed over his wallet, allowing the students to spend freely, finally understanding the joy of teaching and nurturing. The boy at the bottom never expected that his desire for acceptance would put everyone in danger, even nearly killing his own teacher. Due to the summer heat, only the main campus had a swimming pool, so Koro-sensei blocked a river to create a natural pool, which thrilled the students. However, as Nagisa observed, the more Koro-sensei did, the harder it was for them to contemplate assassination. Just minutes into the fun, Koro-sensei started issuing constant reminders. This wasn't allowed, that wasn't allowed, no photos, no reading, quickly dampening the positive feelings. Then Kurahashi splashed water at him, and Akabane shook his chair wildly, trying to toss him into the water. Frightened, Koro-sensei broke into a sweat. His tentacles would swell and stiffen in water. Nagisa immediately noted this weakness, witnessed by Ryoma. Ryoma then scolded Takuya for taking lessons from Koro-sensei behind his back, despite their pact to slack off together. He felt betrayed. Ryoma was furious, believing everyone was bewitched by Koro-sensei. Class E, typically lackluster, was changing. Seeing Koro-sensei using a motorbike to please the students, Ryoma angrily kicked over the model, causing Koro-sensei to cry. The class urged Ryoma to apologize, but instead he vented his frustration by throwing insecticide. Koro-sensei warned that there were limits to pranks, but Ryoma refused to play the good guy with him. Akabane, puzzled by Ryoma's anger, suggested they could simply kill Koro-sensei if he was so bothersome, an assassination classroom privilege. Hearing this, Ryoma prepared to teach Akabane a lesson, but Akabane was unfazed. Ryoma left, using an excuse, while Shiro bribed him with money to drop a chemical in the water during their operation to ensure Koro-sensei's assassination, promising to revert Class E to the state Ryoma desired. Itona taunted him, claiming he was superior in every way to Akabane, yet lacked the courage to act. This provoked Ryoma to consider violence, but Shiro intervened, warning it would only result in a worse defeat. The next day during class, Koro-sensei showed signs of abnormality. It turned out that the insecticide he encountered the day before was actually cedar pollen. This not only made Koro-sensei sluggish, but also rapidly depleted his mucous membranes. Seeing its effect, he immediately challenged Koro-sensei to meet at the pool after school and asked his classmates for help. However, they were reluctant since Ryoma had not participated in previous plans, so they felt no obligation to help, though they were willing to watch. Nagisa caught up with Ryoma to ask about his plan, but Ryoma didn't want to disclose the events of the previous night. Seeing his angry and embarrassed reaction, Nagisa guessed that Ryoma was confident about the plan, but not about himself, suggesting there was more to the story. When everyone arrived at the pool, Ryoma pushed them all into the water. Following Shiro's instruction, he fired what he believed was a signal flare. However, Shiro had deceived him. It was actually a detonator. The dam instantly broke, and all the students fell into the ravine. Koro-sensei's tentacles would fill with water when attempting to save them, and the earlier cedar pollen had depleted his protective mucus. When Akabane arrived, only Ryoma was left shivering. Upon hearing Ryoma still shirking responsibility, Akabane knocked him down, telling him it was better to think of a strategy than to complain. This made Ryoma reflect. At other schools, he often subdued weaker students with violence, but this approach was ineffective here. Here, students focused only on studying, and those relegated to Class E were seen as the weakest, enduring more ridicule and humiliation than what Ryoma could impose. Thus, to his classmates, he was just a clown, and he realized these students would likely be his bosses in the future. Thinking everyone in Class E was useless, Ryoma believed there would be less pressure. However, Koro-sensei's arrival changed Class E, and eventually, Ryoma was the only one being used. Meanwhile, Itona began his attack on Koro-sensei. Shiro reduced the number of Itona's tentacles, significantly increasing his speed and strength. Koro-sensei was completely overwhelmed, and the safety of the students also distracted him. Unwilling to be used by others any longer, Ryoma decided to prove himself, ready to risk his life. He let Akabane organize the tactics, and he was fully committed to cooperating. Even if being used, he knew he still had the power to choose. Ryoma then jumped into the river voluntarily, provocatively stripping off his clothes to challenge Itona. Akabane assured him not to fear, as Shiro would not kill a classmate since keeping the students alive would distract Koro-sensei. When Itona swung his tentacles, Ryoma grabbed them. Itona immediately started coughing, as Ryoma's clothes were coated with the previous day's chemicals, which were effective on Koro-sensei and thus certainly on Itona. While Itona was distracted, Koro-sensei had already rescued the students. This was Akabane's plan. Then all the students jumped into the river, soaking Itona with water, eliminating his advantage. They were ready to confront Shiro if he wanted to continue. Seeing this, Shiro had no choice but to give up. Killing the students would drive Koro-sensei mad. However, Koro-sensei stopped Itona, asking him to return to class soon. After the two left, the students thanked Koro-sensei. He commented that while Ryoma might not be suited for strategizing, he was well suited to be an assassin in combat. Following this event, Ryoma also bonded well with everyone. How terrifying can a man with extreme control desires be? The father dominates the school as its principal, while his son, the top student and student council president, stops at nothing to achieve his goals. Both constantly think about how to control each other. Given the chance, the son would keep his father collared for life, while the father views him as a corporate slave. Their power struggle unexpectedly involves Class E. Soon, the school will hold final exams. Koro-sensei offers special tutoring to everyone, promising to let students attack one of his tentacles for each subject they top, losing 10% of his speed with each tentacle lost. This presents a unique opportunity for Class E, and everyone studies hard. Karasuma, wary of Asano's tricks, warns him. However, Asano claims he won't interfere, emphasizing student autonomy over school influence. Despite Irina's suspicions, Karasuma trusts him. Soon, Sugino receives a call from Shindo, revealing Class A's targeting of Class E, led by the school's top 5 students. These include Araki, the ambitious media hopeful and second overall at midterms, Ren, the humanities genius and student council secretary, Koyama, the memorization expert and 3rd overall, Tomoya, unrivaled in linguistic talent and 6th overall, and Gakushu, the flawless student council president and Class A leader. They plan to coach Class A to push Class E below 50th rank. Despite this, Class E has its own compelling reasons not to lose. Gakushu reports Class A's progress to Asano, hoping to please his father. Asano dismisses it, saying reports without results mean nothing. Gakushu believes Class E's progress has limits, not worth Class A's full effort. Asano reminds him that the positions of the strong and the weak can easily switch. Staying on top is the hardest part. Gakushu proposes a bet. If he wins, his father must grant him a request. Asano mockingly asks if he wants to whine to Daddy, which Gakushu denies. His real concern is the secrets Class E holds. Recently, Asano has been overly attentive to Class E. He suspects his father is involved in dangerous activities beyond education, given the recent rumors about monsters. However, Asano reminds him that these rumors aren't enough to dominate him. Meanwhile, Isogai and others studying in the library face mockery from the top 4 students who also demand they leave the library. School rules dictate that Class E cannot defy Class A students. Yet, Okuda steps forward, asserting that scoring top in any subject during the finals grants them the right to resist, as no one stays on top forever. Araki laughs at this, but Ren, noticing the lovely Yukiko, wants to invite her for tutoring at his house. Koyama realizes that although Class E's overall grades aren't great, they rank within the top 30 in some subjects. Araki, intrigued, challenges Class E to see which class can secure more top subject ranks. The loser must obey the winner. Koyama's provocation instantly ignites a fierce reaction, scaring the quartet away. This drama quickly becomes well known throughout the school. The top 4 fear Gakushu's reprimand, but he is actually pleased, demanding only that Class E sign an agreement with 50 rules, essentially treating them as slaves. The top 4 realize Gakushu is truly formidable. Yet Gakushu notes this is minor. Familiar with the law, he could craft a contract to ruin someone's future if he wished, so he's been merciful. He then begins to stir up the class's emotions, showcasing his true terror. Compared to their excitement, Akabane remains calm. If he gives his all, he could easily top the school. but he mentions that even without maximum effort, he might succeed thanks to Koro-sensei's excellent teaching. While he isn't worried for himself, he's curious about the stakes and how Koro-sensei will handle them. His classmates assure him there's nothing left for Class E to lose. However, Asano plans to use this opportunity to showcase the school's academic rigor by instructing the teachers to increase the difficulty of the exam questions, some of which are at a monstrous level, challenging even for Class A students. Gakushu, full of confidence, has a rule among his 50 that specifies Class E cannot hide anything. His actual aim is his father's secrets, believing that by exploiting his father's weaknesses, he can control him. The final exams arrive as scheduled. Nagisa and Nakamura reach the exam hall first, only to find a stranger there, who is Ritsu's replacement, as Asano has banned artificial intelligence from participating in the exams. As the exam bell rings, what was meant to be a test quickly turns into a battlefield, with classmates becoming comrades in the trenches, yet also facing enemies and spectators. At this moment, they have shifted from assassins to gladiators. It was just a regular exam, but as the bell rang, the classroom transformed into an arena, and the exam questions into fierce beasts. The school's top 5 students charged into the battlefield with hammers and staves to attack these monsters, but all were soundly defeated. In contrast, Class E handled the challenge with ease. Nakamura and Nagisa quickly assassinated the beasts, while Yukiko used a curved sword to instantly detonate a monster. Their impressive performance was undoubtedly due to Koro-sensei's efforts. Beyond regular lessons, Koro-sensei had them study classic literature in bilingual editions, allowing them to tackle even the toughest questions with ease. Koyama, reliant on rote memorization, found his attacks ineffective against a science monster. As he struggled, Okuda passed by riding a science beast, demonstrating that even science needs a language of the heart to feel warm. Meanwhile, to defeat another monster, one had to know the number of African development conferences, a detail that Araki had not expected, leading to his downfall. Isogai, however, remained calm, having learned the best way to study social studies is to experience it firsthand, and Koro-sensei had taken him to Africa. The math showdown was between Gakushu and Akabane, neither of whom took the other seriously. While Gakushu worked diligently, Akabane believed that winning effortlessly was the true victory, aiming to use Gakushu as a lesson for all classmates. 2 days after the exams, Koro-sensei publicly announced the results. In English, Nakamura ranked first in the grade, Tomoya third, and Nagisa 6th. Had Nagisa been more careful with spelling, he could have surpassed Tomoya. In Japanese, Gakushu was first, with his English score just 1 point below Nakamura, putting pressure on everyone. However, in social studies, Isogai beat Gakushu to clinch the top spot, while Araki came third. In science, Okuda dominated with a clear lead, securing first place, with Koyama in third. Class E had now won the bet and successfully turned the tables. Surprisingly, Gakushu topped the math exam, while Akabane ranked 10th, dropping to 13th overall. Class E's best overall performance was only 7th. Class A, already stronger than Class E, naturally swept the top 6 places, so Akabane should not have underestimated them. His arrogance cost him dearly. Gakushu also made mistakes. Class E's victory not only ruined his plans, but also embarrassed Class A. Asano told him the school would not protect someone who couldn't even beat his peers, calling any attempt to control others laughable. Koro-sensei criticized Akabane, noting his failure to act when needed in both the tentacle cutting and the bet, which diminished his presence. He was no longer an assassin, just a boastful clown. Akabane pushed Koro-sensei away and fled. Karasuma thought Koro-sensei was too harsh, but Koro-sensei explained that talents like Akabane often mature late because their ease in solving problems leads them to underestimate the importance of winning and losing. Experiencing failure early is beneficial for them. The exam was a perfect opportunity for students to truly understand success and setbacks, an important lesson Akabane missed until the end. Koro-sensei kept his promise, letting students cut 3 of his tentacles, which had no effect on him. Then Ryoma and others stepped forward, presenting perfect scores in home economics, tying for first in the grade. Though not a major subject, home economics was still part of the finals, and Koro-sensei couldn't refuse, causing him to momentarily lose his composure. However, he He was also proud as the home economics questions were creatively set by the teachers, and Ryoma's group had studied each teacher's preferences to achieve their perfect score, truly embodying the spirit of the assassination classroom. Soon after, the school held its first semester closing ceremony. Class E seized the opportunity to mock Class A and made a public request, which Gakushu and others resented but couldn't oppose. Then the ceremony officially began. However, Sugaya wanted Ritsu to switch places with a substitute, which Karasuma said was impossible because the girl was his boss's daughter. Her grades improved significantly under Ritsu's tutoring, making her father very happy and impossible for Karasuma to refuse. Sugaya looked helpless. Sitting next to her during exams distracted him, leading to his ranking last in the class. Karasuma then realized that even the last in Class E ranked mid-grade level, showing Koro-sensei had significantly elevated the class's level. The principal began his usual critique of Class E, but this time, they were not ashamed as victory was theirs, while other students felt humiliated and threatened. This was the effect Asano desired, but for his teaching philosophy to work, Class E needed to remain at the bottom, prompting him to plan carefully for the summer. Afterward, Class E shared their success, announcing a joint 3-day trip to Okinawa with Class A, which caused internal strife in Class A. Gakushu publicly lost his temper, stating no one should smile until their revenge was complete. Ultimately, Class E decided to wait until they were on the island to cut Koro-sensei's tentacles, planning to exploit his fear of water. Koro-sensei was impressed by the current Class E, giving everyone perfect remarks in their end-of-term evaluations. Thus, the first semester of the assassination classroom concluded. In this world, there exists the strongest assassin. No one knows his real name, but he built his reputation as a harbinger of death using the bones of his assassination targets. Consequently, all his peers call him the Grim Reaper. If Class E's assassination attempt fails, he will eventually appear himself, putting unprecedented pressure on Class E. They cannot afford to miss this opportunity, so they organize a training camp before their vacation. Karasuma even enlists Lovro's help. Seeing this, Irina gets scared and runs away. Lovro tells Karasuma that now all assassins are too scared to target Koro-sensei, leaving only the students to rely on. Meanwhile, Koro-sensei is cooling off at Mount Everest, unaware of their plans. After seeing the plan, Lovro doesn't understand what psychological warfare is. It turns out Koro-sensei enjoys risque magazines, recently trying to use popsicles as hush money, but they are not so easily bought. Moreover, there are many things that could intimidate him enough to cause hesitation and slow his movements. Lovro remarks that the assassination method is indeed cruel, but the key lies in the final lethal blow. Chiba, with his natural talent for spatial calculation, is a born sniper, while Rinka's excellent dynamic vision and precise shooting make her very suited for moving targets. Both are not opinionated, but results-driven workaholics, even prompting Lovro to consider taking them as apprentices. The shooting skills of the rest are also impressive, but Nagisa surprises him the most. The boy seems born for assassination. Lovro, to complete the plan, teaches him his own finishing move. To ensure a good time on the island, they need sufficient funds. Thus, Sugino and others head to the back mountain to catch insects for money. Kurahashi, with her deep knowledge of biology, sets up 20 traps, ensuring that each person could earn at least 1,000 if all goes well. At that moment, everyone discovered Koro-sensei. It was Taiga who had set the trap with adult magazines, a task that took considerable effort as each photo and comic was unique. This time, he intended to save the world with the power of erotica. Below Koro-sensei was a special net, which would activate once the rope was cut, delivering a fatal blow to Koro-sensei and securing the bounty. However, in the next second, Koro-sensei suddenly looked up and caught a beetle with his tentacles. Seeing this, Kurahashi rushed out, causing Taiga's plan to fail. Embarrassed by the crowd, Koro-sensei felt ashamed for secretly reading adult magazines as a teacher. Yet everyone shifted their focus to the beetle, a mutant species with rare white eyes and significant academic value, potentially worth over 100,000 at auction. The students were instantly excited, their travel funds secured. The holiday trip soon began, but surprisingly, Koro-sensei suffered from seasickness. The students told him the assassination would begin at night, and to enjoy the vacation for now. They played with Koro-sensei in groups while others set traps, preparing for the night's operation. Karasuma was very pleased with the students' smooth preparations. After Koro-sensei participated in all activities, he was sunburned. At night, the students took him by boat to a water chapel. To restore his color, Koro-sensei shed his skin early, further reducing his combat abilities. Later, the students surrounded him in the chapel, far from the hotel. Before the assassination, Koro-sensei wanted to watch a movie. During the movie, he sensed two people on the opposite mountain, likely snipers, but felt no threat and continued enjoying the film. Unexpectedly, the students publicly revealed his liking for adult books and cross-dressing, and how Koro-sensei would use clones to pick up tissues, then eat them like fried chicken, completely lacking the dignity of a teacher. Koro-sensei wished he could disappear into the ground. 1 hour later, Koro-sensei was foaming at the mouth, and water had already reached his feet. While he was unconscious, the students had sawed off the foundation of the church. His tentacles had absorbed a lot of water, making his movement sluggish. Then, several students cut off Koro-sensei's tentacles. Akabane and others used a yacht to dismantle the church walls. The students then emerged from underwater, using the water pressure from jet boards to create a water prison. Ritsu and the remaining students shot to block his escape routes. Finally, Chiba and Rinka, who were in ambush, completed the kill. The object previously detected was just a decoy they had placed to mislead Koro-sensei. However, just as the bullet was about to hit Koro-sensei, an explosion occurred. The students were knocked over by the waves. When they searched for Koro-sensei, they found him enclosed in a glass sphere. Koro-sensei claimed this was his ultimate defense form, made of concentrated high-density energy crystals. He could compress his body to a minimum, and the excess energy would reinforce the surroundings. The downside was that he couldn't move for a day. Ryoma tried to smash him open with a wrench, but even a nuclear bomb couldn't scratch him. However, they overlooked Akabane, the devil. Akabane placed him in front of his own embarrassing video and even put a disgusting sea cow on the glass cover, planning to put him inside someone else's underwear. But Karasuma had no choice but to take him away for higher authorities to deal with. Despite everything, Koro-sensei still praised the students, noting that no military force in the world had pushed him so far. The students had done very well, but they returned to the hotel, dejected. Chiba and Rinka were particularly filled with regret. If they had been faster by 0.5 seconds, their plan would have succeeded. This failure made them realize that regular practice and real combat cannot be compared. At that moment, Nagisa suddenly noticed something was wrong with the students. Many were fainting in succession, and Taiga was continuously bleeding. Yet there was no hospital on the island. Karasuma received a call from a stranger admitting they had administered the poison, which was custom-made. Symptoms vary by individual, but death occurs within a week. The antidote was in their possession, but required delivering Koro-sensei to a mountain hotel by Nagisa and Kayano alone. If Karasuma contacted the outside world, the antidote would be destroyed immediately. They were aware of Koro-sensei's condition and knew the gathering place was a legally scrutinized area, obviously prepared well in advance. The police likely wouldn't intervene easily. Ryoma argued against being led by the caller, noting sending Nagisa and Kayano was akin to sending hostages. He suggested taking them directly to a hospital instead. However, Takabayashi disagreed, pointing out the custom virus lacked an antidote at hospitals, which would delay treatment. He believed trading was the best option. Irina reminded Karasuma that there was no guarantee the caller would let Nagisa and others return. Koro-sensei devised a plan for Ritsu to hack into the hotel system to obtain blueprints and security layouts. The only way for the others to enter the hotel undetected was to climb the cliff due to its unique terrain, which was left undefended. Apart from those caring for the injured, the only option for the rest was to launch a surprise attack on the top floor and seize the antidote. Karasuma was uneasy, knowing they were dealing with professional killers, but the students responded with action. For them, trained in rock climbing, this was a minor task, though they lacked real combat experience. They would need Karasuma's command going forward. Koro-sensei reminded them that they were no longer just students, but a special unit of 15 people. Seeing the students' fighting spirit, Karasuma immediately issued an attack order. They used hand signals from training to communicate during the climb. While the students climbed with ease, Karasuma struggled. carrying both Irina and Koro-sensei, effectively moving under heavy load. Irina continuously complained, and everyone just hoped she wouldn't slow them down. Upon reaching the top, Ritsu informed them that the elevator required an IC card, and they had to use the stairs. The hotel's staircase was complex, requiring caution. At the entrance, they encountered guards. Irina approached them, her stunning appearance and alluring demeanor captivating all the guards. She then played the piano, mesmerizing them, and used hand signals to direct the group to leave, but she could only hold them for 20 minutes. Everyone admired her effort. After avoiding the entrance check, Karasuma urged everyone to stay calm. They could blend in as guests, as the hotel was frequented by children of high-ranking individuals who were typically spoiled, necessitating a change in demeanor and attitude. Instantly, the students transformed into rebellious youths. Ryoma and others, realizing they hadn't been exposed, hurried towards the top floor. However, Yuzuki cautioned them to be careful. As Karasuma rushed up, the enemy released gas. Smog asked how Yuzuki had detected him. Yuzuki had noticed him distributing free drinks, which wouldn't happen in such a high-end hotel. Everyone had only had those drinks and the dinner on the boat, but even those who hadn't eaten were poisoned, revealing the poison was in the drinks, exposing Smog's identity. However, the man didn't care. The recent gas was enough to knock out an elephant, and now even the strong Karasuma was incapacitated. All he had to do was report back, but the exit was completely blocked by the students. A tactic Karasuma had taught them: always cut off the enemy's escape route. Karasuma told him the best option upon encountering an enemy was to leave immediately, not to attack. Smog thought defeating Karasuma would mean the kids posed no threat, but he was instantly knocked out by Karasuma with one kick. His strength and speed seemed superhuman. Then, the group supported Karasuma as they moved on, but he needed 30 minutes to recover, leaving the students to rely on themselves. Koro-sensei joked this was what summer vacation should look like. Nagisa quickly knocked him out, and Akabane even tried to stuff him into Ryoma's underwear. Koro-sensei explained that summer wasn't for closing the gap between teachers and students, but for students to apply classroom knowledge to real-life challenges. Meanwhile, Gastro, after setting his seasoning, used a gun as if it were a knife and fork, selecting the tastiest one as his weapon for the day. A true psychopath, and one of Class E's assassins. Yet, another even more twisted assassin was blocking their path in the corridor. Seeing his calm demeanor, Karasuma recognized him as a formidable opponent. Unfortunately, he didn't have a useful gun. Grip smashed a glass with a punch, looking forward to the fight. Though Karasuma was injured and the kids didn't interest him, their presence intimidated everyone. However, Akabane mocked him directly. Unfazed, Grip was ready to kill everyone barehanded, even capable of crushing skulls. Interestingly, the more he trained in brute force, the more he enjoyed tasks outside of assassination, like battling strong opponents. With Karasuma incapacitated and unwilling to waste time, Grip was ready to call for backup to capture everyone at once, but his phone was smashed. Akabane, holding a potted plant, taunted him, asking if he was afraid to fight middle schoolers. Karasuma wanted to intervene, but Koro-sensei reminded him that the old Akabane would face his enemies with his chin up, a sign of his disdain. This time, however, he tucked his chin, showing a serious attitude, learning from past mistakes. Koro-sensei was curious to see how strong such a serious Akabane could be. The genius boy encountered a professional assassin for the first time but showed no fear, immediately throwing a potted plant at him. Grip crushed the trunk effortlessly and launched a fierce attack on Akabane. Realizing the significant difference in strength, Akabane knew the fight would end instantly if caught, so he dodged continuously, using Karasuma's methods, and countered accordingly. Karasuma was shocked. He had only taught the students assassination techniques, not defensive skills, indicating Akabane had learned on his own during fights with classmates. His combat skills alone made him stand out in Class E, proving that genius is indeed fearsome. However, Grip suddenly stopped, declaring the fight uninteresting. He knew cornering Akabane would lead to certain defeat. Akabane didn't deny this but had the ability to help his classmates escape. Yet, he chose not to be cunning and prepared to counterattack. He charged forward, injuring Grip's abdomen with his knee, and seized the opportunity to attack. Surprisingly, Grip resorted to using anesthetic gas, despite his preference for bare-handed fighting. As he prepared to crush Akabane's skull, Akabane quickly recovered and retaliated with the gas. It turned out Akabane had never planned a fair fight either. Finding such a useful tool, he wouldn't pass it up. He dodged Grip's knife, pinned him down, and the classmates quickly tied him up with tape. Previous experiences of underestimating enemies had taught Akabane a lesson, and now he considered every possibility, including Grip's use of any means necessary to stop them. From the start, he knew Grip was lying and remained on guard. Koro-sensei marveled at Akabane's presence on the battlefield, noting he left no openings and was destined for greatness. However, Akabane wasn't ready to let him off that easily. He stuffed devil peppers into Grip's mouth and sealed it with tape, then added chili sauce and mustard into his nostrils, leaving everyone trembling in fear. Afterwards, the group continued their journey, but found the back door locked. They had to sneak inside to unlock it. To avoid drawing attention, the girls volunteered to enter, but everyone was concerned and felt it was necessary for some boys to accompany them. Under these circumstances, Nagisa's feminine appearance was an absolute advantage, and his cross-dressing was particularly charming. Upon entering, he caught Yuji's attention, who invited him to drink. To keep their mission under cover, Nagisa reluctantly agreed. As the girls moved forward, they too faced harassment from men. Yada revealed that her father was a local mobster and showed off a gang emblem badge, scaring the men away. Kayano asked where the badge came from, and Yada explained it was given by Irina, who collected various badges useful for her work. Although she disliked using her looks to manipulate, Koro-sensei had taught them the importance of having a second blade, such as negotiation and hospitality skills, crucial for their future in society. Meanwhile, Nagisa discovered that Yuji wasn't a bad boy. He was just neglected by his parents. His father, a big star, had never cared for him, skewing his values to believe that smoking marijuana was cool and mature. Nagisa immediately intervened, remembering Koro-sensei's warning about the painful life drugs could lead to. Yuji was aware of this, but felt trapped by constant comparisons to his parents, unlike women who just need to find a handsome man. Nagisa disagreed, pointing out that the girls in Class E were quite independent. Just then, the girls noticed security guarding a passage and called Nagisa for help. Yuji, feeling left out, tried to attract their attention with his dancing, but accidentally knocked over a guest's glass. The guest immediately tried to extort him, but Yuzuki stepped in and knocked the assailant down. Yada alerted security to remove the troublemaker. Finally, they successfully opened the back door. Nagisa also encouraged Yuji that although he wasn't as good as the girls, he should still keep trying to look cool. When the girls returned, they were praised by everyone, but Nagisa felt somewhat guilty since he didn't help much after changing clothes and was even secretly photographed by Akabane. However, the girls reminded him that he at least helped Yuji get back on track. The covert mission was nearing its end, and the only way to reach the terrace was by distracting the private bodyguards at the door. Taiga stepped forward and taunted them, calling them useless brawns. Two guards immediately chased after him, allowing Ryoma to sneak up and knock them out. They then picked up the guards' handguns and handed them to Chiba and Rinka. With Karasuma unable to act normally, they were the best shooters. However, Koro-sensei forbade them from killing. Using their skills, Chiba and Rinka could still defeat the enemy without lethal force. Despite a failed attempt earlier in the afternoon, everyone still trusted them. But there was another challenge. To get to the terrace, they had to take a special elevator located behind the music hall on the 8th floor, and they needed to sneak there silently. However, as soon as they arrived, Gastro detected their scent. This was Class E's first team operation, where their coordination and skills matched those of special forces. They showed no fear even against world-class assassins. Upon discovering them, Gastro immediately began to provoke. Rinka attempted to knock down his weapon, but a mistake due to nervousness gave them away. Gastro sensed the scent and deduced it was his subordinates' weapons. He then turned on the auditorium's bright lights to impair the students' vision, exposing Rinka's position. Having a special forces background, Gastro found it easy to target them. Koro-sensei quickly devised a strategy, instructing Rinka and another to stop shooting and wait for an opportunity. Gastro was furious, shooting at Koro-sensei several times, but to no avail. Koro-sensei then used the chapel's seat numbers to have the students change positions. Using student numbers and nicknames instead of names, to keep Gastro from identifying them. After some repositioning, Rinka and Chiba successfully hid. Koro-sensei then gave the order to shoot, but reminded them not to doubt their abilities because of past assassination failures. He reassured them there was no pressure. Even if they failed, he could instantly adjust their positions and weapons. They were surrounded by peers with similar experiences, so there was no need to worry. After all, teammates are there to back each other up. While Koro-sensei was speaking, Gastro located Chiba's position, confident he could defeat him instantly. However, Chiba shot unexpectedly from a different spot, hitting the chandelier's chain and severely injuring Gastro. As Gastro prepared to retaliate, Rinka knocked the handgun from his hand. It turned out Chiba and the others had used a decoy tactic again, tricking Gastro just as they had Koro-sensei. The other students rushed up and restrained him. Watching the entire event, Karasuma finally relaxed. Koro-sensei told him that everyone has several chances to grow, but it's hard to seize them alone. One needs strong opponents and companions to fully unleash their potential. As a teacher, his role was to prepare these conditions for his students. Karasuma greatly appreciated his approach, especially as Chiba and Rinka were finally seen smiling. Karasuma, with half his strength restored, easily took down the last guard. The students marveled that even at half strength, he was far superior to them. They joked that they might as well let him go in alone. Koro-sensei informed everyone that he had figured out who was behind the scenes. The enemy did not understand the advantages of an assassin, or it wouldn't have been so easy. Upon hearing this, Karasuma immediately set up a tactic. However, Ryoma suddenly showed symptoms of infection, but covered Nagisa's mouth to keep it a secret. Previously, Karasuma was poisoned because of him, and he had almost caused the death of the entire class at the pool. Regardless, he refused to back down this time. The group then sneaked in, reducing their footsteps by walking in a zigzag pattern. But the enemy had tied the antidote to a bomb and prepared dozens of remote controls to prevent Koro-sensei from snatching any instantly. It was only when he stood up that they realized the mastermind was Takeoka. He then directed everyone to the rooftop. Karasuma scolded him for hiring assassins and threatening students with a virus, calling him inhumane. Takeoka claimed he was saving the planet. His original plan was to place Koro-sensei in a bathtub filled with special bullets, tie Kayano there as well, and then seal them in concrete. If Koro-sensei used his powers, Kayano would surely die. If Koro-sensei couldn't bear to harm a student, he would just melt away. Unfortunately for him, his perfect plan was foiled by the group, so sparing any lives now depended on his mood. Karasuma told him not to expect forgiveness from the world just because he used saving the planet as an excuse. Takeoka argued that his current actions were merciful compared to what he had endured before. After being defeated by Nagisa, he faced ridicule and insults, and his superiors' respect for him plummeted. The humiliation was so intense that it made his face itch unbearably, worse than death itself. Thus, he felt compelled to seek revenge. Akabane is ready to stand up for Nagisa. Ryoma even tells him that even if Nagisa had lost the contest, Class E would never accept someone like him. Takeoka, infuriated, demands Nagisa follow him to the tarmac. Fearing Takeoka might destroy the antidote in his rage, Nagisa agrees to go. Once on the tarmac, Takeoka destroys the escalator, preventing the others from following. He prepares for another contest with Nagisa, but first demands an apology on his knees. Nagisa kneels without hesitation, yet Takeoka is not satisfied and demands a bowing apology. Under the pressure of the antidote, Nagisa complies. Takeoka, stepping on his head, humiliates him further. Nagisa keeps apologizing without resistance. With a smirk, Takeoka tells Nagisa that the infected will develop bumps all over and their faces will swell like grapes. He eagerly anticipates their reactions. Then, he throws the antidote away and detonates the bomb. Seeing a dagger on the ground, Nagisa can no longer suppress his murderous intent. His classmates are visibly anxious. Ryoma throws a stun gun to wake him up, not wanting Nagisa to be blamed for murder. Koro-sensei advises that anger is disadvantageous and suggests knocking out Takeoka instead, as the antidote might still be obtained from its maker. Takeoka provokes further, prompting Koro-sensei to make Nagisa consider whose life, his or Takeoka's, is more valuable. Ryoma tells him to beat Takeoka, but not kill him. Nagisa regains his composure and picks up the dagger to face the fight. Takaoka reminds him he still has several doses of the drug. Any misbehavior or interference could lead to the death of the poisoned, as remaking it would take a month. Koro-sensei instructs Karasuma to shoot without hesitation if Nagisa's life is at risk. Karasuma understands that the situation has shifted, and the outcome now rests with Nagisa. However, the tricks that worked before will not fool Takaoka now. With his strong combat skills, Takaoka is flawless. Both in physique and experience, they are worlds apart. After having his fill, Takaoka pulls out a dagger, ready to cut off Nagisa's arm to make a specimen. The classmates urge Karasuma to intervene, and Akabane is also ready to help. However, Ryoma stops them, pointing out that Nagisa has yet to use a secret technique taught by Lovro. This technique requires 3 conditions: holding 2 weapons, facing a trained fighter, and the enemy being acutely aware of the fear of death. All conditions are met, making Takaoka the perfect test subject. Nagisa walks towards Takaoka with a smile, causing Takaoka to panic. As Takaoka focuses more on the dangerous dagger, he throws it away in a decisive move. Distracted, Takaoka is vulnerable. Nagisa, as an assassin, seizes this moment to strike Takaoka's jaw and then uses a stun gun to subdue him, smiling his signature smile afterwards. Seeing this, Takaoka's mentality collapses, unable to escape his nightmare. Nagisa then knocks him out with the stun gun, and the classmates cheer. Koro-sensei praises him. Just as everyone worries about the antidote, 3 assassins appear, stating they don't need it. Karasuma, thinking they are about to attack, misunderstands their intentions. It turns out Smog did not poison them as Takaoka requested, but used only food mold, harmless after a few hours. Completing Takaoka's task within an hour wasn't necessary, and they didn't want to harm students or tarnish their professional reputation as they still needed to eat from this bowl. Smog then throws a nutritional supplement to Nagisa, which will improve their condition in a day. However, for safety, Karasuma decides to monitor them for a while. Akabane provokes the other assassins, but Grip has no intention of seeking revenge unless hired to do so. He advises Akabane not to become a target in others' eyes. Akabane is surprised by the concern from someone he had pranked. Finally, Irina completes her mission upon receiving a signal. During the evacuation, Nagisa thanks everyone again, acknowledging their role in preventing a big mistake. The group responds with smiles, affirming the value of companionship. A day later, the students are back to normal. Karasuma buries Koro-sensei, planning an assassination when he recovers. Seeing his tireless dedication, they wonder if they will ever be like him. Irina and the 3 assassins, known for their exceptional skills and thorough thinking, also serve as good role models. Those who admire Takaoka strive to follow him, while his detractors aim to surpass him. Growing up involves alternating between these 2 processes. Suddenly, an explosion occurs by the sea, and Koro-sensei reverts to his original form, as expected. Having been inactive, he hadn't enjoyed the trip, so he decides to relax. He begins making delicacies using his clones, but Akabane, following his advice, seizes every opportunity to ambush him, with other students joining the battle too. The girls, not wanting to miss out, enjoy a swimsuit party. Taiga and Koro-sensei shamelessly join in and end up getting beaten up. Meanwhile, Irina approaches Karasuma for a romantic date, only to be teased by the students. Koro-sensei comforts Nagisa, acknowledging his hard work. Soon, the bell of the assassination classroom rings, marking the start of the 2nd term for Class 3E. This is the worst performing class I've seen, but they met a strange teacher and got a chance to change their fate. She is the world's most formidable assassin, who used her stunning figure and charming face to assassinate many leaders. However, she was helpless against Karasuma, instantly turning into a simple girl, and her voluptuous figure became ineffective. After the first season's crisis, Koro-sensei suggested a courage test, but his real purpose was to matchmake couples and have them write a romance diary. He paired up boys and girls and sent them into a cave, believing the thrilling environment would quickly warm up their relationships. Yet, Nagisa and Kayano, both very timid, panicked after being scared by Koro-sensei and couldn't focus on anything else. On the other hand, Akabane made many promises and discussed past events with Okuda. After Nagisa fearlessly defeated Takaoka, Akabane was shocked by his fearless expression. Though he could beat Nagisa in a fight, it meant nothing for assassination. He realized for the first time that being fearless was truly terrifying, but he wouldn't be discouraged, and believed he would ultimately be the one to kill the teacher. Okuda blushed at his handsome appearance, but they soon noticed Koro-sensei's tools and began to retaliate, trapping him in the cave with his screams filling the air. Afterward, Koro-sensei collapsed, crying to cover his guilt as the students told him not to worry since they hated rumors at their age. Then Irina and Karasuma appeared, with Irina showing a shy demeanor clearly indicating her interest in Karasuma. Leading everyone to decide to matchmake them as watching others in love is more interesting. Irina told everyone she had tried her best, but Karasuma remained indifferent. Trapped by her past, she couldn't face her feelings, but everyone would help her, especially an excited Koro-sensei, as this was rare material for romance. They prepared to change Irina's style to appeal to conservative Karasuma, opting for a pure look and choosing Yukiko's skirt, which unexpectedly made her look even more attractive, leaving Yukiko feeling quite embarrassed by the comparison. At that moment, Yada suddenly remembered that Karasuma had expressed a liking for a masked female warrior. Hearing this, everyone was helpless. They realized Karasuma admired not the person, but the strength. This guy was really odd. As for food, he only ate burgers and instant noodles, which was unbeatable. Then, everyone prepared to set up a romantic dinner, aiming to make Karasuma understand Irina's feelings, regardless of the outcome. At night, the students occupied all the seats in the restaurant, forcing Karasuma to go on a date with Irina. Irina not only tied her hair into a ponytail, but also wore a cape, looking completely different from before. At that moment, Karasuma spoke up, admitting he hadn't expected the students to master the basics so firmly, confident that they would complete the task in the second semester, but not without Irina's help. His words reminded Irina of her painful childhood. She cut her hair tie with a dinner knife, returning to her original look, and questioned if he truly understood what killing meant. As soon as she spoke, she regretted it, having intended to confess her feelings but messing it up instead. The students mocked her, but Karasuma didn't dwell on it, focused on the mission ahead. He planned to train these kids properly next term. But what was that kiss about? Was it Irina's new tactic? Afterwards, the students returned to their lives, preparing to enjoy the last day of summer vacation. However, Koro-sensei gathered them for a summer festival activity, even calling Lovro to invite him. But Lovro, being on a mission, had to decline. This reminded him of Nagisa, who had mastered his techniques in just a few days, a once-in-a-century genius. Then, a mysterious man appeared, making a gun gesture with his finger towards Lovro, who then fell in a pool of blood, proving the terror of the name Grim Reaper through action. The summer festival began at night, but Shiba and Rinka were disappointed. They were kicked out by the shooting game stall owner for being too good. Akabane used his mathematical knowledge to crack the odds of a lottery, intimidating the owner into giving him a game console. Isogai caught many fish through previous training, planning to use them as dinner ingredients. Nagisa and Kayano also enjoyed themselves, while teacher Irina was busy freeloading at the Merchants Association. Everyone integrated their assassination skills into daily life, but Koro-sensei was busy using his clones to run a stall, as his usual salary was not enough for his spending. Then, fireworks signaled the upcoming new term. The higher-ups were very satisfied with Class E's assassination performance, so they increased the bounty again. A successful collective assassination would share 30 billion yen, so Class E would not stop here. One day, after discovering a nationwide surplus of eggs, Kayano devised the pudding explosion plan. They made a 30-meter tall pudding and placed bombs and bullets at the bottom. Koro-sensei, unable to resist desserts, would be killed when he came close enough to trigger the explosion. Fearing Koro-sensei might get tired of the taste, Kayano also created dozens of flavors in an irregular arrangement to keep him eating. The process was scientifically based and well-researched. Kayano told everyone that once she made up her mind, she would act, and the Defense Department would even reimburse the expenses, making it a great opportunity. Originally thought to be just a support, Kayano also showed great initiative and action, changing everyone's view of her. After cooling the pudding and topping it with caramel, Koro-sensei was moved to tears, and the students quickly found excuses to leave. Koro-sensei couldn't wait to dive into the pudding, ready to explode the bomb at the right moment. However, remembering all her efforts over these days, Kayano suddenly felt reluctant. Ryoma grabbed her, reminding her to think about the 30 billion yen bounty. But in the next second, Koro-sensei appeared behind them, having smelled the bomb and gone underground to disarm it. He even reminded Takabayashi to use a scentless bomb next time. To avoid wasting food, he took out the clean pudding and shared it with the students. Although the assassination plan failed, everyone still enjoyed the delicious food. Nagisa went to comfort Kayano, surprised by how much she had done without telling anyone. Kayano told her that a true blade must remain a secret, even from friends. In the afternoon, Class E played a cops and robbers game with Karasuma and Koro-sensei as the cops. Students tried hard to avoid being caught, as getting caught meant doubling their homework. However, with Karasuma's overwhelming strength, it was an unfair match, and 4 students were captured in less than 2 minutes. Koro-sensei, in charge of guarding, immediately pushed them to study. Taiga took the chance to call Sugaya, but he too couldn't escape. Irina imagined overpowering Karasuma if he made a move, but he ended up dunking her in water instead. Sugino learned of this and rushed to rescue her, instructing Taiga to distract Koro-sensei. Taiga bribed Koro-sensei with a photo of a beautiful woman, forcing him to let them escape. An infuriated Karasuma later warned him never to let anyone go again. However, Yada quickly played the sympathy card, claiming her younger brother was seriously ill and constantly cheering for her, not wanting to disappoint him. Koro-sensei softened instantly and allowed everyone to leave swiftly. The students won the game, causing Karasuma to break down. "You get to be the good guy. I have to be the villain." But the exercise proved beneficial for the students. On his way home, Nagisa accidentally saw a wanted poster for a voyeur who looked just like Koro-sensei, accused of stealing women's underwear. The next day, all classmates cast disdainful glances at him. Koro-sensei refused to admit it, insisting that he was shaking fries at an altitude of 10,000 meters that night. But no one believed him. Usually peeking at adult magazines was one thing, but stealing was too much. He was advised to turn himself in. To prove his innocence, Koro-sensei decided to publicly destroy his adult magazines. Only then did the students discover the class roster marked with girls' bra sizes. Koro-sensei, unable to explain, tried to divert the topic with a barbecue, but mistakenly pulled out a string of women's lingerie, leaving the students disappointed. Akabane felt something was off. Given Koro-sensei's speed, if he wanted to commit a crime, he surely wouldn't leave so much evidence behind. Therefore, the real culprit must be someone else trying to frame Koro-sensei. Only someone familiar with Koro-sensei's routine would know enough to do this. So they decided to investigate and staked out near the girls' homes. Just then, Koro-sensei arrived, but he looked more like a thief. Soon, a man in a helmet appeared and quickly stole underwear. Koro-sensei immediately chased after him. After removing the helmet, they were shocked to find it was one of Karasuma's subordinates. Suddenly, white cloth rose from the ground, trapping Koro-sensei inside, and Shiro appeared, revealing himself as the mastermind. Koro-sensei tried to break free, but his tentacles started dissolving upon touching the cloth. Then, Itona prepared for his revenge. Worse still, Shiro, learning from past lessons, had equipped Itona's tentacles with special gloves that would dissolve Koro-sensei's skin upon contact. Koro-sensei was knocked down by Itona but dodged the fatal blow. If it had been the first term's strength, they might have succeeded, but Koro-sensei was continuously improving. Only a teacher who grows can better educate his students. Using his prior skill of absolute defense, he mastered a new technique. He compressed his tentacles, and a bright white light burst out, shattering the white cloth and stunning Itona. Koro-sensei caught him and let Shiro leave. As a teacher, he would take good care of Itona and clarify he wasn't the underwear thief. However, suddenly Itona knelt, convulsing. Realizing the repeated failures had caused the tentacles to erode his nerves, Shiro decisively abandoned him, as no one would invest in a failure. As Itona went berserk again, Koro-sensei had to let him go to protect everyone. Due to Itona undergoing daily adaptation treatments to ease the rejection of his tentacles, he would suffer hellish torment without them. Without intervention, he'd go mad and die within 3 days. At this time, Itona was wreaking havoc in a mobile phone store. Akabane thought Shiro was despicable for treating everyone like pawns and suggested they ignore the situation. However, Koro-sensei told him that as a teacher, he could never abandon his student, a vow he made when he became a teacher. Itona finally realized that previous encouragements were false, and only true strength could win people over. Just then, his classmates appeared, welcoming him to join Class E. If he wanted to fight, Koro-sensei offered to do so in private. Before Itona could respond, they were attacked by dust bombs designed for Koro-sensei. Shiro then took Itona away, setting a new trap for Koro-sensei, marking Itona's last utility. After ensuring his students were safe, Koro-sensei followed them. Upon arrival, Shiro immediately activated powerful lights to slow Koro-sensei down and began shooting wildly at Itona, who was restrained by a special net. Koro-sensei protected him with his body. Seeing Shiro's true nature, Itona realized he had been deceived. Fortunately, the students arrived in time to defeat the soldiers and destroy the lights. Shiro gave up the opportunity and deemed Itona worthless. Koro-sensei told everyone that removing Itona's obsession with power and victory could free him from his tentacles. After seeing Itona attack the phone store, Yuzuki sensed something was wrong and started investigating. Finding out his parents ran a mobile parts factory. After the factory went bankrupt and his parents abandoned him, Itona's relentless desire to kill the teacher might also have been an attempt to gain the bounty to help his family. Ryoma thought it wasn't a big deal. Everyone has their troubles and just needs to vent. So he took care of Itona by first taking him to Takuya's ramen shop to fill up. However, Itona commented that it was the old version of ramen and would be phased out if not upgraded. Then, Yoshida took him street racing to distract him with excitement, but ended up ejecting Itona from the car. Seeing their failure, Hazama pulled out a revenge novel, hoping its unhappy ending would convince Itona to give up, but Itona went berserk again. He declared he wouldn't end up useless like them, and vowed to defeat Koro-sensei. Seeing this, Yoshida fled, but Ryoma confronted him directly, admitting he once felt the same, but realized it was unachievable and better to give up early. Angered, Itona lashed out with his tentacles, but Ryoma caught them. He told Itona that under Koro-sensei's encouragement, Takuya was continuously learning and improving his business, promising a transformation of the ramen shop. The same went for Yoshida. Despite difficulties, they wouldn't degenerate. It didn't matter if they couldn't kill their opponent now, or if they failed multiple times, as long as they succeeded eventually. Ryoma's words diminished Itona's murderous intent, and Koro-sensei resolved the issue with the tentacles. Although losing his power, Itona gained many friends. The next day, he came to class not by breaking through the wall, but even becoming close friends with Ryoma and others. In boys' eyes, the only thing they unanimously agree on is always girls. When Itona first arrived in the assassination classroom, Koro-sensei immediately had him undergo intensive tutoring, which reignited his murderous intent. He then built a remote-controlled tank equipped with a dedicated camera and shooting gun, aimed to hit Koro-sensei's heart beneath his tie, ensuring his death. However, as soon as the tank was deployed, it accidentally captured upskirt views of the girls, instantly diverting the boys' attention. Technical advisor Takabayashi proposed a plan, and Taiga took on the task, asking Ritsu to write a program to modify the camera. After succeeding, they tried again, but crashed on the stairs. Yoshida immediately took over the drive system task, adding camouflage for better concealment and enhancing the navigation map. The next day, the revamped tank ventured out but encountered a weasel by the back mountain. As Itona controlled and shot at it, he enraged the weasel. When retrieved, the tank was severely damaged, but this incident helped Itona bond with his classmates and integrate into Class E. Although the mission failed, he wasn't giving up, echoing Ryoma's words that success in the end is all that matters. Taiga agreed, insisting they scout under all girls' skirts within 3 months. However, murderous intent loomed as a girl immediately questioned whose idea it was. Itona decisively blamed Taiga, who denied it. Suddenly, Ritsu activated, stating the requested program was ready, and the other boys distanced themselves, still facing the girls' scolding. Only Akabane, who had skipped class, avoided trouble. Seeing this, Itona immediately found and slipped away with Akabane. The next day, Kimura was downcast. His parents, being police officers, named him Masayoshi Kimura, which often led to him being mocked at social gatherings, a situation he feared would persist even at graduation. His parents believed having a name was good enough and saw no reason for complaints. Koro-sensei understood them well, considering Irina and Karasuma never used his real name, always resorting to hey and you instead. However, seeing the strong aversion his students had towards their names, Koro-sensei suggested everyone write down 5 nicknames. He would randomly select one, and they would use these during a nickname assassination game. This would also prepare them for hotel crises, allowing them to cooperate without revealing their identities. Soon, everyone headed to the back mountain to assassinate Karasuma. The nicknames were a bit absurd, but ignoring the melodramatic choices, their performance was solid. They cornered Karasuma, with Chiba launching the first attack. Karasuma had anticipated this and was prepared, but Kimura managed to successfully strike from behind. Afterwards, Koro-sensei asked how they felt about using nicknames. The response was overwhelmingly negative, describing it as the most embarrassing moment ever. However, Kimura didn't understand why he was the only one to use his real name. Koro-sensei explained that changing a name was easy, but if Kimura succeeded in assassinating him, the media would praise him as living up to his name. Thus, the name itself wasn't important. What mattered was the achievements of the person bearing it. Koro-sensei then chose a new nickname for himself, Prince of Fate as Swift as the Wind, which was instantly ridiculed by the students, renaming him Idiotic Perverted Octopus. Although the nicknames brought a day of joy, they wouldn't last. After all, this was the assassination classroom. Meanwhile, Gakushu was talking with his father. Asano did not want Class A to fall behind. As a leader at the top, he emphasized the importance of knowing when and where to win, then figuring out how to win. Utilizing loopholes in the rules and making the most of each piece's role are qualities that a superior should have. If Gakushu could not learn this, he would never surpass him. However, Gakushu intended to prove himself in his own way. He is the biggest villain in the assassination classroom. He can learn anything within 3 days. Facing a karate teacher with 30 years of practice, on the first day he was beaten until he vomited. On the second day, he used his anger to focus and learn. By the third day, he easily defeated his opponent. His talent is monstrous. Recently, students from Class E found out Isogai was working part-time in a restaurant and curiously went to visit. Whether greeting guests or pouring tea, they admired how cool he looked. He worked part-time because his mother was ill and he needed to support his family. This is the charisma of a class president. Maihara and Taiga remarked that this guy had no flaws except being poor, adding to Isogai's unique charm. He was popular with women, whereas Nagisa had the advantage of good looks. Nagisa received love letters as a heartthrob, while Yada's love letters were seen as impure love. Thus, sometimes, being handsome matters. Just then, Gakushu suddenly barged in with others. Isogai was demoted to Class E because of his part-time job. If reported again, he could be expelled. Gakushu threatened them, saying if they could beat Class A in the upcoming pole toppling contest, he would keep their secret. Isogai, knowing Class A's strength, didn't want to burden his classmates. His classmates immediately scolded him, reminding him of Class E's motto, never abandon, never give up. They just needed to win the contest. Koro-sensei was pleased to see this. Isogai always prioritized class harmony, which is why he had such prestige today, a vital quality for a leader. However, Karasuma knew the pole toppling contest heavily favored numbers, putting Class E at a disadvantage, especially with Gakushu as a formidable opponent. Soon, the sports festival began. In the bread-eating contest, Sumire excelled. The rest of the students used their assassination training to integrate strength and balance into the competitions, easily dominating. Yet, Isogai worried about the pole toppling contest. Koro-sensei comforted him, saying that an individual's power is very limited in society, but his ability to fight alongside others was stronger than Gakushu's. Even in difficulties, everyone would face them together. The pole toppling contest soon began. However, once the game started, it was revealed that Class A had brought in external support. Gakushu initially thought Class E, being fewer in number, would abandon defense and attack directly. Instead, they formed a complete defensive position. Gakushu immediately sent the reinforcements to attack, aiming not just to topple the pole, but to crush everyone from Class E. Yoshida and another classmate rushed forward to meet the attack and were knocked into the spectator seats. The rest of Class E didn't panic. Isogai issued a command, and the students at the front instantly jumped. using their poles to firmly pin down the reinforcements. Gakushu then ordered his flanking squads to charge. Seeing a large gap in the middle, Isogai seized the opportunity to attack. But just as he reached halfway, the flanks quickly closed in, surrounding them. Karasuma and others were very anxious, but Koro-sensei told them not to worry, as he had specifically taught Isogai tactics for fighting outnumbered. Isogai quickly adapted and issued a new tactic. Everyone ran towards the spectator stands. Class A immediately followed, but were hindered by the chairs, causing confusion. After all, the match had no defined area, so their battlefield was the entire school. Gakushu remained unconcerned, focused only on protecting the pole, dismissing the others as mere distractions. However, the next moment, Yoshida and his partner suddenly rushed towards the pole. Their earlier injuries revealed to be a ruse for this surprise attack, while the rest ran towards Gakushu. Yoshida was unexpectedly thrown out, and Gakushu quickly adjusted his position. Despite Gakushu's ability to control the battle, Koro-sensei doubted his success against Isogai's ability to alter the battle with his teammates. Isogai used his shoulders to help his classmates climb up, and they swiftly captured Gakushu. Only Takabayashi and Ryoma were left guarding the position, and they managed to subdue several reinforcements using the principle of leverage. Class A's reinforcements rushed back, and both sides were soon locked in a stalemate. Isogai knew the moment had arrived. He signaled to Itona and then helped him jump. Itona descended from above and successfully toppled the pole, winning the match in an incredible manner. Afterwards, Asano criticized Gakushu again, blaming the loss entirely on his leadership. Some reinforcements disagreed, prompting Asano to strip off his clothes and challenge them himself. He defeated all four. He told Gakushu that one must be prepared to die after a loss, as it is the only way to grow from failure. On the other hand, Class E was very happy, and Isogai gained a large following of fans. Gakushu promised them he would not go back on his word, but warned that next time he would destroy the entire Class E. Everyone took it lightly, but this incident showcased Isogai's leadership quality. Class E is lucky to have such a leader. This was the first time Koro-sensei got angry with his students. Faced with Ryoma's excuses after making a mistake, Koro-sensei knocked him down and tore up the review materials in front of everyone. He forbade them from studying in any way before the exams. He needed them to understand that there are things more important than studying. The reason stemmed from a recent incident where the students, pressured by exams, rushed to school using parkour and injured an elderly man, causing a minor fracture in his right leg that required 2 weeks of bed rest. Koro-sensei was furious when he learned of this and negotiated with Karasuma to handle the situation. He told the students that if they didn't care about the weak, they were no different from the enemy. Therefore, before the exams, he decided to teach them a significant lesson. The students realized their mistake. After scolding them, Koro-sensei immediately sent a basket of flowers and apologized to the elderly man. However, the man, a kindergarten principal, only asked the students to take care of the children to forgive them. The next day, the children tormented the students, except for Yukiko, who was liked by the kids. Takebayashi suggested they secretly study there and treat the labor as the cost of earning a reward to ease their distress. The others didn't understand how he could speak so seriously when stripped down to his underwear. While they discussed this, Sakura criticized them, saying their work should at least justify the oxygen they consumed. Everyone was speechless, having never encountered such a sharp-tongued child. Sakura, the boss of the kindergarten and there for 5 years, had been a chronic truant at her previous school. She then handed Nagisa a broom to work, but it broke. After inquiring, they learned that the principal brought children who skipped school or had no school to attend here, with negligible costs. So, despite the lack of funds and repairs, the students decided to renovate the school properly. The next day during class, Kayano led a play to capture the children's attention, incorporating playful fights and assassination techniques which earned unanimous praise from the kids. Sugino and Sugaya were in charge of building repairs, while Ritsu developed specific architectural plans. Nakamura and others tutored the children, but Nagisa faced challenges with Sakura, who was far behind due to truancy, and he couldn't find an effective teaching method for her. Upon asking why she skipped school, Sakura revealed she was often bullied, and her parents, rather than being supportive, only lectured her, and she thought Nagisa would do the same. Just then, a kitten climbed a tree and couldn't come down. Sakura explained to Nagisa that attending school had similar risks. The higher you climb, the greater the risk of falling, so she preferred to stay put. However, Sugino and Taiga successfully rescued the cat using a human ladder, leaving the children awestruck. Nagisa explained to Sakura that after understanding the dangers of heights through many experiences of looking up and being looked down upon, they learned to climb adeptly. They also remembered the dangers after falling a few times. This conversation profoundly changed Sakura's view of Nagisa and ignited her desire to learn. 2 weeks flew by, and everyone learned much that wasn't taught in school. The principal was discharged from the hospital and agreed to keep their efforts secret, as he too was a teacher wanting what's best for the children and couldn't reject Koro-sensei. However, he was surprised by the new buildings they constructed using wood and materials from the back mountain, following Ritsu's plans, which completely transformed the site. They even added a power system to the principal's bicycle, charging it as the children played on the equipment. The principal didn't expect them to achieve such good results, so much so that it somewhat displeased him. They even turned his old dentures into a bicycle bell. But no matter how well they did, if the children didn't accept their efforts, he wouldn't forgive them. At that moment, Sakura came running with her report card to thank Nagisa. She had followed his advice, only attending school for exams and not giving bullies a chance to target her. Nagisa shared his secret technique with her. Attack before the opponent is ready, a tactic from their Class E. Sakura was delighted and hoped Nagisa would teach her more often. Seeing this, the principal forgave them, and Koro-sensei felt reassured. However, the joy was short-lived. The next day during the midterm exams, Class E suffered a devastating loss, with many students dropping in rank. Gakushu and others quickly mocked them, but they overlooked Akabane. This time, Akabane managed to surpass and crush the top 4 students, securing the second highest score in the school and reclaiming respect for Class E. He warned the others that Class E had merely held back this time, but would show no mercy in the future. All this was within Koro-sensei's expectations. Over the summer, Akabane had been studying new materials, so even without 2 weeks of review, he still succeeded. Afterwards, the students apologized to Karasuma, realizing their mistakes and understanding that they could use their skills to help others, not just for money and grades, but with caution. After witnessing everyone's progress, Koro-sensei planned a barbecue. However, a sudden attack interrupted everything. The attackers wanted to demonstrate new national equipment developed for assassination, repaying the teacher's instruction, but also to protect others. Koro-sensei was very satisfied. When he first arrived, the classroom was filled with murky intents to kill, but now it was filled with warm intents to kill, reminding him of an old friend's words that one day he would meet such adversaries. Now they were right before him. Irina's birthday arrived, but Lovra was unreachable, and Karasuma lacked a sense of romance, leaving her feeling lonely. Sensing this, the students decided to help. They led Irina to the back mountain, continuously asking about her glorious past, which made her unexpectedly popular. Meanwhile, other students headed into the city to choose a gift for her using their class funds. While hesitating, they met a flower seller who told them that despite numerous options for gifts, flowers remain the top choice because they symbolize not only sentiments, but also the beautiful yet fleeting nature of life, similar to humans. After buying the flowers, they handed them to Karasuma to deliver to Irina. Confused, Karasuma didn't understand why he should be the one to give them. Akabane explained that the assassination plan also needed Irina's help, so it was essential to maintain good relations among colleagues. Karasuma agreed, and Ritsu immediately notified the others to retreat. Irina was speechless and returned to the office where Karasuma presented the flowers, explaining the delay was due to work. Irina was overjoyed. Previously, people had tried to please her with various luxury items, but compared to Karasuma's gift, those were worthless. However, Karasuma then mentioned this might be the first and last time, as if they failed their mission, the Earth would be doomed. Irina angrily opened the window and knocked Koro-sensei down, realizing it was everyone's idea. She felt angry about being made fun of, stating they were just colleagues, and she was done playing the teacher game. After throwing the flowers at Karasuma, she left the classroom. The students were somewhat dissatisfied with Karasuma, finding him too cold. However, Karasuma believed that the assassination classroom did not need a blade dulled by romance. If Irina couldn't restrain herself, he would hire a new assassin. Irina wasn't really angry, but she knew her capabilities and staying further wouldn't yield anything new. It seemed like an opportunity, but suddenly a man appeared behind her, and she vanished for 3 days. Everyone was worried, but Koro-sensei went off to Brazil to watch soccer, telling them to notify him if anything happened. As soon as Koro-sensei left, the flower seller came to the classroom, and everyone realized something was amiss. The man revealed his identity as the top assassin, Reaper. He explained that while flowers are beautiful and disarm suspicion, most flowers attract insects. Now, Irina was in his hands. This was his first lesson to them. If they wanted to save Irina, they should come to the designated place at night. If they didn't show, Irina would die. Ryoma tried to disrupt his rhythm by claiming Class E didn't care about Irina, but the Reaper had already investigated and knew they had developed a deep bond with her, so they wouldn't ignore her plight. He then scattered flower petals into the air and vanished. Ryoma pulled out the combat gear, ready for a rescue. No one from Class E backed down. They were ready to use their strength to protect others. At night, they arrived at the specified location and used drones for reconnaissance. Sumire reminded Ritsu to notify Koro-sensei immediately if they weren't back by midnight. The group then sneaked into the building, but everything was under the Reaper's control. He manipulated the elevator and led them to a cell where Irina was held. Taiga quickly drew attention to give others time to escape. As the walls were blasted open, they successfully escaped. Meanwhile, Koro-sensei, who was waiting for a match, sensed something was off. After the students escaped, he asked Ritsu for directions, but found out she had been compromised by the Reaper. The Reaper then appeared in front of everyone, unmaterialized in form, heightening their sense of crisis. Yoshida and another student rushed to attack, but were instantly defeated. Nagisa, masking his killing intent with anger, prepared his special move but froze before he could clap his hands. Akabane and the others were also incapacitated. The Reaper explained to Nagisa that the clap technique had a higher stage. Human consciousness has wavelengths, and the closer it is to the peak, the more sensitive it is to stimuli. At the moment the opponent's consciousness reaches this peak sensitivity, they experience a powerful shock that stuns them longer than his own methods. Meanwhile, the other students were returning to rescue Irina. Just as they set Irina down, she took the opportunity to overpower them all, delivering her final lesson to them. Afterwards, all the students were locked up. However, Akabane didn't think they could defeat Koro-sensei, and Karasuma had said that when students face insurmountable obstacles, it's time for the teachers to step in. At that moment, Koro-sensei and Karasuma, tracking by scent, arrived at the scene. The Reaper and Irina repeated their old tricks, performing a ruse in front of them. The Reaper told them he hadn't killed Lovro. Instilling fear was his way of keeping competitors away. He revealed that he had rigged Irina and the students with bombs, threatening to detonate them and kill everyone. After pushing Irina forward, she suddenly broke Koro-sensei's leg. The Reaper then activated a mechanism, trapping him in a cell made of material specifically designed to restrain him. Faced with this predicament, Koro-sensei decided to lick the cell open, but the Reaper warned that he would detonate the bombs if he continued. He then prepared to crush both the people and the cell with water pressure of 200 tons per second. Karasuma, hearing this, was angered. He had no objection to dealing with Koro-sensei but refused to involve the students. Irina felt guilty, but as a professional assassin, she was only concerned with the outcome. Karasuma once asked his superiors what to do in such situations. They told him to handle it as he saw fit, essentially making him take the blame. Karasuma kicked the Reaper, valuing the lives of the 27 individuals over the earth itself. If the Reaper made a move, he would stop him. Seeing the serious Karasuma, the students exclaimed how cool he looked. He also reminded Irina that being a professional assassin isn't something to be taken lightly. To avoid disrupting his plan, the Reaper had to lure Karasuma away. Then Irina defused the bomb. In her eyes, Karasuma couldn't defeat the Reaper, who had even managed to capture Koro-sensei. At that moment, Irina received a message from the Reaper to distract Karasuma so she could attack from behind. Karasuma caught up and used a metal door to block the bomb, successfully averting the crisis. But as he confronted the Reaper, Irina suddenly fired a shot. Karasuma told Irina to stop, warning her she would definitely die if she continued. But Irina was already prepared to die, feeling only the Reaper could understand her past. However, the Reaper betrayed Irina and detonated the bomb, burying her and Karasuma under the rubble. Indeed, there was no trust among assassins. Yet, Karasuma survived again due to his reflexes. Later, as Karasuma prepared to continue his pursuit, Koro-sensei asked about the situation. Learning of Irina's injuries, all the students became anxious and begged him to save people first. But Karasuma felt that collaborating with the Reaper meant accepting the consequences. Kurahashi tried to persuade Karasuma, suggesting Irina's troubled childhood led to her poor decisions, but at 21, she still had time to correct her mistakes, just as Karasuma had forgiven them. Irina had grown up in a war-torn world, surviving only by bloodshed. Dying because of betrayal seemed like fate, yet Karasuma chose to forgive and tore his shirt to bandage Irina's wounded hand. Irina, in turn, got a nosebleed seeing Karasuma's physique. The Reaper found the cell empty and triggered the bomb, but Takabayashi had already dismantled it. The others, using the effects of their combat suits, blended into the walls, deceiving the Reaper. As the Reaper prepared to return and investigate, Karasuma, sensing his presence, asked Irina for help. Despite coming from different worlds, Karasuma expressed the need for Irina in his and the students' world. When the Reaper appeared, Irina immediately confronted him. However, the Reaper considered betrayal a normal occurrence. Hearing this, Irina began to let go of her grievances, but the Reaper also had to face her betrayal. Suddenly, Karasuma appeared and embraced him. After the opponent stood up, Karasuma realized he had been wearing a human skin mask all along to better disguise himself. He had even cut off his entire face. The Reaper declared he would kill Karasuma and make a new mask from his face. They immediately began hand-to-hand combat, attacking and defending in turn. The Reaper told Karasuma that he hadn't actually suffered a tragic past. Those stories were just to win over Irina. His parents were killed by an assassin, but upon witnessing it, he felt no sadness, instead admiring the skill as beautiful. He believed assassination was a combination of beauty and skill. After saying this, he threw flowers into the air, distracting Karasuma, then aimed his finger, embedded with a gun, at him and shot, piercing Karasuma's artery. Karasuma immediately bled profusely and fell to his knees. The Reaper approached to check on him but found tentacles behind Karasuma. Suddenly, Karasuma stood up and kicked him in the groin. It turned out that Karasuma's ability to communicate with Koro-sensei was also due to the tentacles. The Reaper stated that no one but him could kill Koro-sensei, and asked Karasuma to spare him. But Karasuma knocked him out with one punch, believing his students could achieve the same. Seeing the Reaper's state, Koro-sensei lamented that his educators were incompetent. He commented that if the Reaper's skills were used in orthopedics or plastic surgery, he would be a genius. Unfortunately, one's life and death are determined by their world and other people. Later, as Irina attempted to flee, she was caught by everyone, but no one blamed her. However, she needed to return to work properly, as everyone still wanted to hear her stories. At this moment, Karasuma also presented her with flowers, which he had obtained as spoils of war through his own consciousness, hoping she would like them. This instantly captured Irina's heart. Koro-sensei then told Karasuma that he no longer wanted anyone to involve students in assassination, and Karasuma agreed to his proposal. He applied to his superiors that assassins involving students shouldn't receive any rewards. The superiors didn't refuse, as countries were collaborating on a new plan called the Final Assassination Plan. Karasuma didn't know how the assassination classroom would end, but in his heart, it was the most beautiful place. The boy was harshly slammed into the desk by his mother just for expressing his wish not to change classes. In her eyes, girls had better job prospects, so she disregarded her son's wishes and raised him as a girl. This made Nagisa's life feel like a life simulation game named after his mother. With only 4 months until advancement, his classmates were considering their future careers. Irina, as the guidance teacher, even changed into conservative clothing to better blend in, but ended up looking more attractive. At this time, Nagisa discovered that someone else had filled out his career aspirations, all from a girl's perspective. However, Akabane's dream was to become a bureaucrat, working behind the scenes to govern the country, a role Koro-sensei fully supported as it suited his abilities. Seeing Ryoma lost in the hallway, Akabane suggested he could be a bureaucrat since he would attract public attention, making it easier for himself to work behind the scenes. Nakamura aimed to be a diplomat. Her language skills had always been excellent, drawing much attention. Yet she wished to be ordinary so she could mingle and play with the underachievers. Only upon seeing her parents' disappointed tears did she realize what she had lost. In Class E, both dreams could become reality thanks to Koro-sensei. Everyone in the class had a goal, but Nagisa was conflicted. While helping Irina remove a label from her clothing, unnoticed by her, he realized his own talent for assassination. He asked Koro-sensei whether he should become an assassin. Nagisa's talent for assassination was undeniable. He could attack anyone fearlessly, a crucial skill for an assassin. However, he was disregarding his own safety and dignity. Koro-sensei hoped he would carefully consider where and for whom his talents should be used. After returning home, Nagisa's mother pushed his report card in front of him. He had ranked 52nd, just 2 places shy of moving up to Class D. She planned to bribe the head of Class D, but Nagisa was unwilling. Her face darkened upon hearing this, and she slammed his head against the desk repeatedly while berating him. His father had left home, unable to communicate with her any longer. Nagisa's life had to follow the plan set by his mother, including the schools he attended and the company he would enter, all areas where she had failed. Therefore, she believed Nagisa, as a girl, must succeed for her. However, Nagisa could never escape his mother's obsession. She told him she would discuss transferring him to Class E the next day, but his attempt to object was stifled by her intimidating demeanor. That night, Nagisa confided in Koro-sensei. The next day, as everyone was at a loss, Koro-sensei disguised himself as Karasuma. Soon, his mother arrived at the office. Koro-sensei politely complimented her, saying she was as beautiful as Nagisa, which upset her. She pulled Nagisa's hair and discussed his promotion and future plans. When Koro-sensei asked if Nagisa agreed, she insisted that he knew nothing and that it was natural for parents who had failed to pave the way for him. Koro-sensei then understood why Nagisa had such a personality. He removed his wig and declared that children are the masters of their own lives, not tools to cover her psychological scars. He would not agree to the transfer unless Nagisa wished it. His mother erupted in anger, berating Koro-sensei before storming out of the classroom. Koro-sensei apologized but expressed a desire for Nagisa to voice his own thoughts. He believed that with resolve, Nagisa could overcome these difficulties and start his life anew in this classroom. Later, his mother drugged his food to incapacitate him, determined not to let anyone hinder her plans. She then took Nagisa to the classroom, intending for him to burn it down and leave Class E voluntarily. However, Nagisa couldn't do it. His mother's angry words confined him like flames. But suddenly, an assassin appeared, quieting Nagisa's mother. She promptly started shouting at him, only to be subdued by a whip. The higher-ups had said killing the boy would mean no bounty, but they hadn't forbidden killing anyone else. This made her afraid. However, Nagisa noticed the assassin's carelessness and decided to use his skills to protect his mother. As he approached the assassin, he voiced his intentions. He would prove his choices were right by graduation, then cut his long hair and gradually repay his upbringing costs. Then, he unleashed a deadly technique, instantly taking down the assassin. His mother felt Nagisa drifting away and fainted. Koro-sensei caught her and drove them both back home. Now, Nagisa had made up his mind. If the assassination plan ended, he wouldn't become an assassin, considering it a dangerous job. However, his talents could be used for other purposes, like protecting others. The next day, Nagisa voluntarily cooked and took over other household chores to relieve his mother's stress, and she finally stopped restricting him. Shortly after, the school hosted a campus festival. Gakushu teamed up with local businesses to inject funds and stand out. Koro-sensei encouraged everyone to participate because the competition was about overall ability. With a lower budget, creating higher value would naturally attract customers. Class E had a unique resource, the ingredients from the mountain behind them, which were pure, natural, and low cost. Yada went down the mountain to promote their products, but unexpectedly encountered some delinquents from the first season. They threatened to post negative reviews online unless the food was bad, ensuring nothing would sell. However, just looking at the menu photos, the food seemed appetizing. Upon tasting it, it was so delicious, it brought tears. Takuya explained that the noodles were made from acorns and yam for texture. The dip, made from mountain ingredients, had a refreshing taste, and even the soy sauce was specially brewed from pork bones, adding to the deliciousness. The delinquents tried to find faults, But then Irina suddenly appeared, turning their opinions around instantly. She flirted and convinced them to order one of everything. Lacking enough cash, she gently reminded them of the ATM at the school entrance. They rushed to withdraw money. However, Class E's tactics didn't stop there. They also created a website for promotion. Yet Itona discovered through a drone that Class A was still more popular. Gakushu combined a concert with gourmet food. For a 500 yuan ticket, attendees could enjoy the show while eating. There were several venues and a tour. As long as people were fed, they wouldn't go to the mountain. To attract fans, Gakushu performed himself playing various instruments, a true display of his genius. When the principal arrived with Sakura and others, they too praised the taste. However, he noted that without fame, even the best flavors are useless. He reassured them that as long as the food was good, it would eventually gain widespread renown. During a break, Nakamura learned why Nagisa kept his hair long and came to apologize. She admitted she shouldn't have teased him in the past, but Nagisa didn't mind. While they were talking, Yuji arrived. He discovered they were students at this school from hotel records and rushed to join the campus festival, mainly to see Nagisa. Decisively, Nakamura took off Nagisa's pants and gave him her skirt to wear, thinking Yuji, a wealthy heir, should be exploited. Nagisa, wanting to keep a low profile, took Yuji aside to taste food. Yuji thought this exclusive tasting was a privilege. Nakamura kept suggesting dishes for Nagisa to recommend, and Yuji obediently handed over his wallet, his affluent demeanor obvious. However, Akabane went further, suggesting Nagisa ask for 10,000 yuan for a date. Before Nagisa could make the offer, Red Eye was invited and arrived with a gun, startling Yuji, who prepared to call the police. In a panic, Nagisa explained that he was just a guest from the Hunter Association. Suddenly, Lavro appeared behind them. Although they weren't harmed and were happy about it, the timing was poor. Even the assassin from the first season showed up. Nagisa quickly claimed they were all performers, but Yuji, being the son of a big star, recognized the insincere flattery. Nagisa's smile was genuine in the hotel, but not now. Seeing this, Nagisa confessed that he had been forced to dress this way since childhood, often mistaken for a girl. Yuji was internally devastated. Nagisa told him that even weaknesses and flaws could be turned into weapons if used correctly, a lesson from their assassination classroom. The shop was also built this way, and today's customers were connected through such methods, inspiring each other. After hearing this, Yuji got up to leave. Nagisa tried to return the money, but Yuji declined, saying he just felt foolish. The next day, everyone went up the mountain with trepidation, unsure if today's turnout would exceed Class A's. To their surprise, the mountain path was crowded with visitors, including TV crews. It turned out that Yuji, a famous food blogger, had recommended Class E's shop to his followers, claiming it changed his outlook on life by teaching him how to turn disadvantages into advantages. He explained how, even as a wealthy heir, he could use his allowance to help others. The shop was bustling, and everyone worked together to take care of all the customers, making new connections. By midday, they were running low on ingredients and considered foraging deeper into the mountain. But Koro-sensei stopped them to avoid disrupting the ecological balance. The students were content, happy to have met so many people. At closing time, they welcomed a special guest. Now, Nagisa's mother understood why he stayed. Nagisa wasn't just her shadow, but had grown capable of independence. However, she hoped he would live with her until adulthood, promising not to hinder his post-adulthood plans. Having finally become a more attentive mother, she wanted to care more for Nagisa. She believed that all the fortuitous encounters in the world could become teachers imparting knowledge, and she trusted Koro-sensei to pass on the legacy entrusted to him. Class A came first, and Class E third, a remarkable achievement for just 1.5 days of operation. Their success and universally acclaimed food significantly changed the students' perception of Class E. However, Asano happened to overhear this. To solidify his teaching philosophy, the teacher turned innocent, adorable students into zombies filled with murderous intent in just 2 minutes. They lost their humanity, focusing solely on solving problems, with knowledge eroding their brains like parasites, making life unbearable. Recently, Gakushu reported the festival results to Asano but faced criticism. Asano suggested they could have sabotaged the competing food stall with bad reviews or food poisoning to gain an advantage. However, Gakushu disagreed with his educational philosophy. noting significant progress in Class E, with Class A also improving through competition, and recognizing the importance of camaraderie. Only defeating the weak does not make one strong. Asano didn't explain, but asked Gakushu to wait outside for 3 minutes while he spoke to other students. Gakushu feared a repeat of past tragedies, but this time the impact was worse. Under Asano's influence, the students' perspectives changed completely, harboring only hatred for Class E. Asano demonstrated to Gakushu that what they considered strong could be easily defeated with just a few words. He declared he would take full responsibility for the upcoming final exams, asserting that without strength, there is no value or meaning. This time, he intended to teach Gakushu a harsh lesson. Gakushu never experienced a father-son bond, with home feeling like another classroom where Asano maintained a perpetual teacher-student relationship, never releasing his control over his students. But Asano's terror extended beyond this. Noticing changes in the city, he suspected Karasuma and others were likely executing a new assassination plan. Asano then demanded a hush money of 1 billion yen from Karasuma, claiming it was for the safety of the students. Karasuma had no choice but to agree. But this experience revealed the extent of Asano's terror, showing how he manipulated the defense ministry with ease. Meanwhile, Koro-sensei began to inspire the class, hoping everyone could rank in the top 50 and graduate proudly as students of Class E. However, Sugino learned that Asano had become the homeroom teacher of Class A, making their goal challenging. Asano's extraordinary leadership, manipulative rhetoric, and keen observation skills intimidated everyone. Even his teaching prowess was comparable to Koro-sensei's. No student in Class A dared defy his lessons, and the class atmosphere was akin to hell. Asano allowed Gakushu to go home to study alone this time, instructing him to just focus on himself. Gakushu sought help from Class E, believing that if they could defeat Class A, it would challenge Asano's educational philosophy. Yada wondered if Gakushu intended to change his father's mind by proving him wrong. Gakushu had no such plans. He aimed to surpass his father, whether as a parent or a formidable individual. This was their way of interacting as father and son. However, Class A, apart from him, was not in a normal state. Asano used their hatred for Class E to push them to their limits in their studies. If they emerged victorious, they would trust this method, but such an approach had its limitations. Against true power, they would be utterly defeated. Therefore, Gakushu implored Class E to win. Despite his arrogance, Class E could see his sincerity. Akabane mocked him, telling Gakushu to worry about himself since he planned to secure the top rank this time. The class reminded him not to repeat past mistakes, or he wouldn't even make the top 10. Akabane awkwardly punched Ryoma during the tease. Isugai reassured Gakushu not to worry, as this challenge also benefited Class E. They would give their all, with Akabane even bringing a fierce resolve to the battle. But Asano increased the difficulty of the exam questions again, causing even the teachers who set the questions to worry for the students. Then, Koro-sensei approached Asano, marking their final round in the educational competition. Koro-sensei was grateful for the acceptance and seized the opportunity to make a request. If he won, he wanted Asano to explain why he became a teacher. Koro-sensei mentioned that people usually become teachers for 2 reasons: to share their successes or failures. Which one would Asano be? With 1 week left until the final exams, Koro-sensei used his duplicates to tutor frantically. Soon, the day of the decisive battle arrived. Passing by Class A, everyone was startled by their zombie-like appearance, feeling a chill run through them. But they were determined not to give up, as this was a battle of fate that would also decide which of the 2 monsters had more killer intent. During the exam, Class E students gave their all, knowing that losing would leave them regretful even if they succeeded in their assassination mission. They intended to show their second blade without reservation. However, just after the first exam, everyone was exhausted, facing questions that were hellishly difficult compared to the first monster they faced. Class A desperately threw themselves into the fray. When Class E faced danger, Ritsu boldly stepped forward, urging everyone not to give up. Her words successfully boosted morale. In the math battle, they calmly analyzed the paper, sorting questions from easiest to hardest and tackling them one by one. Even if they couldn't beat the boss, they aimed to score as much as possible. Then, an unexpected twist occurred. The penultimate question was a recursive formula, something they had only heard of before. However, Akabane confronted the challenge head-on, throwing a grenade into its midst and successfully resolving the difficult problem. Last week, while tutoring his peers, he had taught this very question. This was Koro-sensei's teaching method, allowing students to explain subjects they excel in to one another for deeper understanding and even boosting team spirit. This approach also eliminated Akabane's weaknesses, making him more perfect, but Gakushu was no less formidable. This time, not being in charge of Class A allowed him to focus and sharpen his own skills, enhancing his strength. Yet which method is more effective would be determined by the showdown between Akabane and him. The educational duel between two great monsters, a fated battle between the best and the worst students. Who will claim the ultimate victory? The key to deciding the winner lies with the geniuses Akabane and Gakushu. Will the cold intent to kill prevail, or will the warm intent rise against the odds? Let's wait and see. As the final question falls like a meteor from the sky, Gakushu and Akabane face their ultimate showdown. Gakushu, analyzing unnecessary language, successfully identifies the essence of the question. To find his space in a cube, he needs to conquer each of the 8 corners, dominating the space, his specialty. Unlike his father, a different type of ruler, the current Asano is blinded by his zeal to prove the correctness of rational education, which destroys rather than shapes individuals. This time, he aims to critically address his father's dominating approach. Meanwhile, Akabane contemplates the problem. Many have seen him as a genius, but he views others as equally gifted. Sugino integrates well into the group. Okuda is engrossed in her passions, and Ryoma is decisive. Everyone has a space Akabane cannot reach, making them all geniuses in their own right. Now, he uses his talent to solve the final question. His focus is vastly different from Gakushu's. If the world extends infinitely, everyone has room to showcase their talents. Distributing this space across different cubes requires 8 people, each taking an eighth to fill their spaces, plus his own to form a perfect circle. Thus, in this cube, his ratio to others is 1-to-1. With this realization, Akabane easily solves the problem without complex calculations, simply understanding that beyond himself lies an infinite world. Soon after, the bell rings. Gakushu is just 2 lines short of finishing, ultimately facing a regrettable defeat. A few days later, Koro-sensei announced the results. Ryoma ranked last in the class but 46th in the grade, meaning all of Class E entered the top 50. Nakamura and others even defeated the top 5, taking the top 7 spots. Akabane beat Gakushu to claim first place. However, Akabane knew without this year, he couldn't have solved the final question. All students burst into cheers, a step closer to their dream school. Class A grew increasingly tired in later exams. No one can sustain such intense focus for long, especially not when hastily trained. Gakushu acknowledged Class A's flawed approach and planned to find a winning strategy for high school, hoping for continued support. Suddenly, a hostile presence loomed behind him. Asano couldn't understand why a group of losers dared to speak so confidently. Life is full of uncertainties, and only at the end does one realize if a battle is life-changing. Thus, no one can afford to fail. Before graduation, he intended to reform everyone's thinking, but the class opposed him. Class E and Gakushu grew stronger through failure, showing Asano's teaching philosophy was incorrect and unsuitable for them. If Asano was displeased, they were willing to join Class E. Gakushu said this was their true sentiment, but Asano knocked him down. Gakushu laughed, noting Asano seemed more like a father out of control. Eventually, all students left the classroom, leaving Asano visibly upset. In contrast, Class E remained harmonious. Koro-sensei said they could move up, but no one wanted to leave, even planning a sneak attack. Suddenly, noise came from outside. Asano had ordered the school building destroyed, planning to move Class E to a new building. Koro-sensei and the students refused, but Asano presented a termination contract on the spot. No one could stop his plans. To avoid termination and save their classroom, they had to gamble with him. Asano prepared 5 workbooks for different subjects and 5 hand grenades, 4 of which were designed to target Koro-sensei, and 1 specifically for killing humans. They looked and smelled the same, and would explode the moment they were released from the hand after pulling the pin. He would place one randomly within any page of the workbooks. Koro-sensei had to solve the first problem on that page to avoid the explosion. Koro-sensei would choose 4 workbooks and Asano the last one. If Koro-sensei gave up or was killed in the explosion, he would still win. However, Ryoma calculated that Asano's chance of losing was only 1 in 5, and he could also forfeit without harm. But Koro-sensei faced the risk of 4 explosions. Asano explained to everyone that the world is filled with injustices, especially between the strong and the weak, which is why he educates his students to become the strong. Koro-sensei, committed to the assassination classroom, agreed to proceed. But upon seeing the problem, he panicked, and the grenade exploded successfully. Asano knew this weakness, and given Koro-sensei's reaction time and thinking speed, trapped him effectively. Furthermore, Asano threatened him with a contract to rush into the next problem without any time to recover. Asano told everyone that assassination is the weak's method against the strong, yet the strong can torment the weak at will. If he secured the assassination reward, he planned to open schools nationwide to teach this principle, with Koro-sensei merely serving as a foundation for his educational philosophy. He is the best teacher in the world, aiming to educate top students. He not only ran his own tutoring classes, but also funded the class with his earnings. However, a student's suicide due to bullying twisted his mindset, gradually turning him into a controlling chairman. He then believed that only by making students strong could they truly survive. Recently, unable to accept failure, Asano gambled the entire Class E, forcing Koro-sensei into his trap where a slight mistake could lead to a grenade death. But just as he thought he had the upper hand, the situation turned. Koro-sensei quickly flipped through the workbook and solved the problem. It turns out that Koro-sensei, in preparing to tutor students, had already reviewed all national workbooks, so he instantly knew the problems by page, except for some forgotten ones in math, which he left for Asano. Asano, disoriented by Class E, devised this strategy out of desperation. Otherwise, he would have thoroughly investigated Koro-sensei. Now cornered, Koro-sensei was curious to see how Asano would face his own demise. Initially, Asano was just a tutor, gentle to his students, and even supplemented the class with his stock trading earnings. His main goal was to nurture good students, tailoring his teaching to individual needs. When Okuda bullied classmates using his basketball skills, Asano led by example, teaching students that everyone has different strengths and should not use them to bully others. A year later, his students successfully entered their desired middle schools and gave him a tie clip as a gift, affirming his impact. Later, as parents recognized his results, more children enrolled in his tutoring classes. Several years later, he received a call from Okuda, only to learn of Okuda's death. Okuda had been bullied by seniors in a club and ultimately chose to commit suicide. This made Asano question himself. If he hadn't taught his students to be honest and obedient, perhaps Okuda wouldn't have met such an end. He realized that merely being good students wasn't enough. They needed to be strong, or else it was meaningless. Before he could strengthen his students, he knew he had to become stronger himself. Thus, he learned karate to defeat enemies and turn those who harmed his students into gamblers. His tutoring classes eventually became a middle school, and the original classroom served as a warning to the weak. He would stop at nothing to aid his educational endeavors, which is why he agreed to the assassination plot. But now, both the strong and the weak were distancing themselves from him, and only death awaited him. However, in Asano's view, destroying the Earth wasn't necessarily bad. At least everyone would share the same fate, and his students wouldn't suffer misfortune. At a critical moment, Koro-sensei protected him using his shed skin. Koro-sensei had long known Asano might resort to suicide. They were both stubbornly passionate about education, willing to risk their lives to fulfill their educational missions. Koro-sensei had even spoken to Asano's former students, whose education from decades ago embodied the ideals he pursued. Koro-sensei was fortunate to encounter Class E, where individuals with similar experiences could unite, overcome challenges, and become confidants for each other. In fact, it wasn't Koro-sensei who created Class E, but Asano himself, continuing his past educational philosophies unconsciously. Koro-sensei taught his students assassination not to kill, but to equip them with the skills to survive. These words reminded Asano of his past with Okuda. Ikeda used to skip classes, and Asano had told him that he could skip if he ever managed to beat him in basketball. This was quite similar to Koro-sensei's approach. However, Asano didn't think his views over the past 10 years were wrong, as many strong individuals had come from his school. But out of respect for Koro-sensei's approval, he agreed to keep Class E and even join the assassination efforts in the future. Koro-sensei welcomed this, believing that daggers suit the strong. After leaving, Gakushu was waiting to have dinner with Asano, especially after a tough day, deserving a good meal. Asano advised him to give up trying to surpass him, as he was continually progressing, both as a teacher and a father. Meanwhile, the National Defense Department was brewing new plans, and after the storm, it remained to be seen whether Koro-sensei would still be a teacher. The girl witnessed her sister being killed by a monster, but was powerless to stop it. After her own investigation, she identified the murderer. Years later, she disguised herself as a harmless student and also possessed monster tentacles. She trapped Koro-sensei in a pit lined with a special material deadly to him, from which there was no escape. Koro-sensei could only slow his fall by clinging to the pit walls. Kayano prepared to deliver a fatal blow, but Koro-sensei quickly contracted his energy, causing a massive explosion that allowed him to escape. It turned out that Kayano's real identity was Aguri's sister, and she saw Koro-sensei as the murderer. Although unsuccessful this time, she now understood Koro-sensei's abilities and was confident she could kill him in their next encounter. Despite the pain caused by the tentacles, she endured it effortlessly, showing remarkable resilience. Her classmates later discovered that Kayano's real name was Akari, a genius actor capable of mastering any role. She perfectly hid her murderous intent through her acting skills while in Class E, where her assassination talent surpassed anyone else's. Initially, she was going to meet her sister after work, but when the research lab exploded, she rushed in despite the danger, only to find her sister dead in the monster's arms. After the monster left, she found a letter it had left for the executives, revealing it would become a teacher in her sister's class. Realizing she needed equal power to confront the monster, she implanted a drug she found in the lab into her body, dyed her hair, and falsified her records to successfully enter the school. To avoid drawing attention, she stayed close to Nagisa, playing a supporting role and silently enduring excruciating pain. Shiro found her and hoped to act together once she was ready, but Itona's situation made Kayano distrust him. She was willing to sacrifice her life to kill Koro-sensei, hoping only that Shiro would not interfere. Meanwhile, the students had confirmed Kayano's identity. They wanted to know why Kayano called Koro-sensei a murderer and hoped he would reveal the truth, as Aguri was their former teacher. Koro-sensei agreed to disclose everything once they found Kayano. At that moment, he received Kayano's challenge. That night, everyone gathered in the back mountains. Koro-sensei warned Kayano to remove her tentacles immediately for treatment, or she would risk her life. However, Kayano thought he was just bluffing. She remembered that she had pretended to be a weak girl for her final plan, believing it was the only way to avenge her sister. Everyone felt the loss of teacher Aguri, who was a passionate and good teacher. Over the year, they realized that Koro-sensei could not possibly be a murderer. There must have been a misunderstanding. Kayano's current actions were also not typical of a killer. Despite this, Kayano was determined to go her own way. She concentrated all her heat in the tentacles and then ignited a ring of fire to form a battlefield. She was in top condition, and her senses were very sharp. Kayano attacked Koro-sensei and soon tore off one of his arms, gaining the upper hand. However, Itona noticed that her mind was being eroded by the tentacles. If this continued for a few more minutes, she would die regardless of whether she could avenge herself. At this point, Koro-sensei sensed Kayano's desire to live and, risking danger, summoned a clone to seek help from everyone. They needed to quickly remove Kayano's tentacles. The abnormal flames on her tentacles were burning her life force. If this continued, her life force would be drained. The only solution was to remove the tentacles during the battle. Koro-sensei planned to expose his weakness deliberately and attract Kayano's attack. When struck, her killing intent would weaken. The students had to find a way to make Kayano forget her murderous intent at that moment. If they could do so, he could remove the tentacles with minimal damage. However, during this time, Kayano's tentacles would continue to target his heart. If completely destroyed, Koro-sensei would undoubtedly die, but he planned to shift his vital point to buy time. However, Irina did not believe the kids could pull it off. Nagisa starts to think calmly. Kayano is very excited right now. Nagisa cannot use his special technique. Both daggers and snipers would harm Kayano. However, Kayano has already pierced Koro-sensei's heart. Seizing the opportunity, Koro-sensei restrains her. He promised Aguri he would never give up on Class E, and he intends to keep that promise. Seeing this, Nagisa hesitates no more. He covers Kayano's mouth with a snake-like suffocation. He forbids Kayano from claiming it was all an act. After a 15-hit combo, Kayano faints into Nagisa's arms. Koro-sensei immediately removes her tentacles. Although Kayano is fine, Nagisa feels shy. Irina comments on his kissing technique. Suddenly, Koro-sensei coughs up blood. His heart is damaged and needs time to recover. But Shiro suddenly launches a surprise attack. Upon seeing Shiro remove his mask, Koro-sensei realizes his true identity is the genius scientist Yanagisawa. Soon after, Kayano wakes up. Seeing Nagisa, she blushes, but tells everyone that she indeed came to Class E with murderous intent. However, after a year of interaction, she realizes Koro-sensei is not the monster she imagined. She starts to doubt there was a misunderstanding, hence her hesitation. Recently, her tentacles suddenly erupted, and she could no longer control her murderous intent, leading to the current tragedy. But no one blames her, as she is part of the class. Koro-sensei also promises to reveal the truth, hoping Kayano would listen to his side of the story. Her words deeply move Kayano, who sincerely apologizes. The classmates forgive her. Koro-sensei didn't plan to reveal his past, but he didn't want to lose everyone's trust in their bond, so he had to disclose his secrets. 2 years ago, he was known as the Reaper, an assassin born in a harsh slum. The only truth he believed was that people die when they are killed, making assassination the perfect job for him. After killing thousands, he earned the name Reaper, but was betrayed by his apprentice and captured by Yanagisawa, becoming a lab rat subjected to human experiments all day. Aguri was his monitor, and upon meeting, the Reaper saw her as a useful ally since Yanagisawa was her fiancé with no real affection between them, often abusing Aguri. The Reaper would chat with Aguri whenever possible, feigning smiles to appeal to her, and their relationship grew. Yanagisawa's core research was to trigger antimatter in living beings, and although the daily experiments were torturous, enduring them meant gaining powerful abilities. One day, when Yanagisawa was about to abuse Aguri, the Reaper couldn't stand it and knocked Yanagisawa out. After realizing Aguri was a teacher, he often helped her prepare lessons, and Aguri felt he was more suited to teaching than she was. However, the Reaper disagreed because his first student, seeking to replace him, had betrayed him. Aguri believed the student did so just to get more attention from the Reaper. When Yanagisawa regained consciousness, he knocked out the Reaper and found that the powers inside him were growing. Yanagisawa threatened to use Aguri as a hostage if the Reaper tried to escape. Soon, the Reaper experienced a rejection reaction, and his body began transforming into something non-human, which worried Aguri. This concern made the Reaper realize for the first time how pleasant it was to be cared for. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Aguri decided to celebrate it as his birthday and gave him a tie as a present. Unfortunately, a wall separated them, and she couldn't put it on him herself. Aguri was tired from worrying about her students and the pressure from Yanagisawa and wanted some encouragement from the Reaper. He turned his hand into light, sneaked it through the vent, and gently touched her face with his palm. This time, his smile was genuine, not feigned. Soon after, an accident occurred. Mice injected with antimatter on the moon suddenly released energy that destroyed 70% of the moon. Yanagisawa calculated that the same would happen to the test subject on March 13th next year. He planned to kill the Reaper. Aguri immediately ran to warn him. The Reaper realized it was time to leave. Aguri wanted to stop him, but she couldn't even qualify as a hostage against his tentacle form. After dodging countless bullets, the Reaper instantly killed soldiers with his tentacles. Then, a spear designed to counter his tentacles pierced his body. Unexpectedly, to Yanagisawa, the Reaper did not die but became fully enraged. While dodging bullets, the Reaper threw a spear that blinded Yanagisawa's left eye. He then began a massacre, destroying the entire lab. Thinking he would die in a year anyway, he considered destroying the world now. In a critical moment, Aguri hugged him and successfully prevented Koro-sensei from destroying the world. However, this accidentally triggered a landmine, and a spear instantly pierced her body. Holding her, Koro-sensei regretted that his great power could not save her, but Aguri said it was okay even if he killed her, because he was very important to her. The Reaper realized he would never meet someone like her again. In her final moments, Aguri asked him to spend the remaining time teaching those poor children, so they wouldn't linger in darkness like him. The Reaper found Aguri's flaws charming and decided to become a good teacher, continuing to care for her students. When he put on the tie, Koro-sensei was officially born. He vowed to use all his strength to fulfill Aguri's ideals. This was his past. He learned from Aguri to see people as they are, not to judge them by their flaws, and he would do his utmost to help his students reach their fullest potential. March 13th is the final deadline for Earth's explosion, and also the school's graduation day. It is now January 6th, and the assassination classroom is on summer break. Yet, no one is attempting assassinations. Nagisa and others visit Kayano, but their mood remains somber. Thinking of Koro-sensei's past, they can't carry out assassinations happily and are unsure how to face the assassination classroom. The third term quickly starts, and the mood in the classroom remains somber. Karasuma asks Koro-sensei if he had anticipated that the truth would lead to such consequences, and whether he can still fulfill his duties as a teacher. Koro-sensei responds that everything should just take its natural course. Irina explains to everyone that the most foolish way to kill is impulsively, driven by emotions and desires without any plan. The second method involves suppressing one's emotions to kill, but this also results in significant losses despite the rewards. Therefore, she hopes everyone will carefully consider their actions. Later, Nagisa gathers everyone at the hill behind the school to share his thoughts. He is unsure if he can achieve it, but still wants to find a way to save Koro-sensei. Class E, traditionally known for its unity, now faces severe divisions over Koro-sensei's past. Nagisa wants to save Koro-sensei, but Akabane believes completing the assassination is the best way to repay him. The two argue intensely. Koro-sensei, not wanting the class to split, proposes an assassination contest where the winner's plan will be followed. Recently, the truth about Koro-sensei was revealed, prompting Nagisa and some classmates to try saving him as a way to repay him. However, Nakamura opposes this, arguing that the bond between assassins and their target is essential, and deviating from this would undermine the purpose of the assassination classroom. Koro-sensei also does not want to see a failed outcome or unsuccessful students. Akabane accuses Nagisa of being stubborn and imposing his will, a common trait among geniuses. Despite Akabane's insistence, Nagisa denies this, but soon shows his intent. Akabane becomes angry upon seeing Nagisa's resolve. Nagisa quickly uses his legs to pin Akabane's head, shocking their classmates with his martial skills. Maihara and others quickly intervene to separate them. Suddenly, Koro-sensei appears, not wanting to see Class E split. He proposes deciding the matter through an assassination contest. The teams then align themselves. Red represents those who want to kill him, and blue those who want to save him. Victory is achieved by capturing the opponent's flag, or eliminating all enemies. Koro-sensei will respect whatever decision they make. Chiba and Rinka choose red, aiming to kill Koro-sensei with a single strike. After understanding Koro-sensei's difficulties, Kayano, who was also saved by him, chooses blue. Believing in science, Takabayashi and Okuda think they can find a way to save Koro-sensei and also choose blue. Taiga, Sugaya, and Mimura, treating assassination as a graduation project, opt for red. Kimura and Hazama go red, while Yukiko and Yada choose blue. Maihara and Izogai, without complex motives or intent to kill, pick blue. Itona, seeking a reward, joins red. Unexpectedly, the introverted Hinata opts for assassination, and the only neutral one is Ritsu. Akabane and Nagisa serve as team leaders. Once the teams are set, the contest begins with Karasuma as the referee. As Takabayashi's group enters the red territory, Rinka and Chiba snipe at them. Yukiko proves formidable. She stealthily eliminates Chiba and Taiga. As an expert in war video games, this type of contest is easy for her. She also instantly takes out Sugaya. However, Akabane, anticipating her plan, waits halfway and eliminates her with a dagger. Afterwards, Akabane instructs Ryoma and two others to hold their position, while Mimura takes the high ground to scout and provide intelligence on the blue team's movements. With his strong scouting skills, as soon as Mimura observes the blue team's actions, Akabane sends Hazama to launch a surprise attack. Hazama quickly eliminates 2 opponents, but is then taken out by Isogai. At this point, Hinata pulls out a dagger and swiftly eliminates Kurahashi. She then attacks Kayano, but Kayano, quick and agile, steps back and draws her pistol, preparing to eliminate Hinata. However, Kimura suddenly appears and defeats her with his gun. This shows that teamwork cannot be underestimated. However, after their success, Kimura and Hinata become overconfident and act on their own, falling into Sumire's trap. This allows the blue team to even the numbers. The battle continues with constant exchanges and eliminations, but Akabane remains calm. As long as they hold the line, the blue team cannot infiltrate. Meihara and others realize that eliminating Rinka is key to victory. Nakamura, anticipating their plan, sends Ryoma and others to support Rinka, aiming to delay the opponent so she can easily capture the flag. A fierce battle ensues. Isogai and his team initiate a charge, with Isogai sacrificing himself to distract and allow Yada to successfully ambush Rinka. Then Itona takes out Yada. Meihara tries to sneak an attack, but Nakamura and others are already charging towards the blue base. However, Nagisa suddenly appears and takes them down. Akabane then realizes that he had been hiding behind Karasuma all along, successfully concealing his presence. As Meihara attempts a sneak attack on Akabane, he ends up being counter-killed. The competition has now become a one-on-one showdown between Akabane and Nagisa. Akabane knows that to truly convince his classmates, he must defeat Nagisa in his strongest area. Therefore, he invites Nagisa to a hand-to-hand combat match. Nagisa accepts the invitation, prepares his gear, and gets ready to fight. While Nagisa appears frail, he is a genius in assassination. Akabane, a genius himself, still strives to excel, and the two have always respected each other as worthy opponents. From their first year, Nagisa noticed Akabane, and their mutual interest in anime brought them together. Halfway through the term, they became friends. However, this friendship did not last long. When confronted by delinquents, Akabane beat them severely. Seeing Akabane excel in many areas made Nagisa start to feel inferior. After Akabane was suspended, their relationship returned to being just classmates. Akabane's distancing was not out of disdain, but because he found Nagisa very dangerous. He always wanted to provoke and then crush Nagisa's talents. The suspension further strained their relationship, but the assassination classroom provided the stage they needed. They would defeat each other and have everyone accept their views. After losing his dagger, Nagisa no longer had an advantage and was severely beaten by Akabane. Nagisa seized an opportunity to counterattack, but his strength was too weak to cause any harm. Just as Akabane was about to finish the fight, Nagisa unleashed his ultimate move, pushing him back. He then drew a dagger to stab Akabane, but instead threw it away and used a shoulder hold to restrain him. As long as Akabane couldn't break free, his major artery blood flow would slow down, causing him to lose consciousness gradually. Nagisa used this technique to defeat Akabane, aiming to convincingly win over their classmates. However, a dagger previously dropped nearby caught Akabane's eye. Recalling his past with Nagisa, he chose to give up, conceding that such a seemingly weak person achieving this much meant he had already lost. After this battle, they opened up to each other, and their friendship quickly warmed up. Indeed, fighting proved to be the best way to deepen their friendship. For Koro-sensei, whether it's division or combat, both are merely educational methods. Eventually, Karasuma agreed to everyone's decision to save Koro-sensei, but only gave them a month. If no solution was found, they would proceed with the assassination. Meanwhile, external forces were still set to act. Takabayashi noted that all countries targeting Koro-sensei likely had investigative data. Ritsu mentioned she had hacked into all research facility databases. His research samples were scheduled to return from the International Space Station on January 25th. yet they were just low-level assassins without access rights. However, Koro-sensei asked Karasuma and Irina to leave, having thought of a plan involving their responsibilities. So, the upcoming actions would be left to him and the students. The country was about to launch a manned rocket, originally with a dummy as the experimental subject. If replaced with actual people, they could sneak into the space station to steal the data. The US had used special materials to prevent data theft, meaning only the students could undertake the mission to the space station. The rocket could only carry 2 people, and everyone recommended Akabane and Nagisa for the task. One was meticulous, and the other a genius in assassination. A perfect duo. Koro-sensei promised to perfect the rocket's programming and would help alter the return route, ensuring their safety. Once the team was set, they began their operation. They cooperated well and successfully infiltrated the satellite development base. Nakamura and Yada entered the surveillance room to draw attention, while Kimura took the chance to implant Ritsu into the system. Then, Ritsu took control of the surveillance, allowing Nagisa and Akabane to sneak into the rocket through the pipelines. By this time, Koro-sensei had finished inspecting the rocket, confirming it had no issues. Soon, the rocket launched, with Koro-sensei following it, hoping the pair would not just focus on the data, but also enjoy their space journey. However, he was quickly left behind as his speed was only 20 Mach compared to the rocket's 23 Mach, marking the first time they surpassed Koro-sensei. Upon docking at the space station, American researchers immediately went to check but were ambushed by Nagisa and taken hostage. Ritsu also cut off the live feed to the ground, ensuring temporary safety. Nagisa then used the hostages and a bomb to threaten them, demanding a copy of the research data. The researchers, unfazed and admiring their bravery, noted that anyone daring enough to work in space was prepared for death. Nagisa assured them that no one would die as long as they cooperated, and their return journey would not be inconvenienced. The researchers thought them too audacious, but Akabane explained that he was fulfilling a promise to a friend and that they were students of the assassination classroom, risking their own lives to take others. Prepared for sacrifice, they managed to persuade the researchers, who agreed to let Nagisa and his team help unload the supplies before copying the data for them. Nagisa and Akabane also took the opportunity to enjoy their space journey, a rare experience for them. However, Akabane reminded Nagisa that even if they found a way, they had to consider whether Koro-sensei wanted to be saved. Soon, they obtained the data. Akabane handed over the bomb, which turned out to be filled with sheep fat, and the dagger was also soft. It was all just a scare from start to finish, as if they were visiting a friend's house. Afterward, Ritsu, through extensive calculations, determined a safe return route for them. This time, she experienced many new things through numerous sensors, even fully sensing the life states of Nagisa and Akabane. This improved her intelligence and even allowed her to develop emotions. She felt fortunate to be in Class E Koro-sensei, then came to welcome them back, and the return capsule successfully landed on the hill behind the school. All the classmates ran to greet them. Karasuma's mentality instantly collapsed, as he didn't know how many departments he needed to apologize to. The teacher took the blame upon himself, claiming it was he who coerced the students, and the real data replacing the dummies was more convincing. The route Ritsu calculated also helped accelerate the research institute's progress, so the merits could offset the faults. After studying the data, everyone discovered that the risk of explosion in tentacle creatures was inversely proportional to their size. The larger they were, the more stable, and the smaller, the more likely to explode. Thus, the chance of humans exploding uncontrollably was very low. Regular use of a specific medication could prevent energy solidification and reduce the risk of explosion to no more than 1%. This medication was the venom Okuda had previously researched. Everyone burst into cheers, as a 1% risk was negligible. Koro-sensei no longer needed to explode. However, Isogai suddenly realized their assassination dilemma. Karasuma reassured everyone that as long as Koro-sensei remained a dangerous creature, the superiors would not stop the assassination mission. Nagisa announced their decision. If they couldn't assassinate Koro-sensei by the deadline, they would simply become ordinary teacher and students. Until then, they must wield their blades with firm belief, for the bond between assassin and target was their connection, a compulsory lesson arranged by Koro-sensei for them. Who would have thought that Koro-sensei, the strongest creature, would be immobilized for half an hour by a swimsuit photo. Asano was speechless upon seeing it and wished he could kill him on the spot. He felt that Koro-sensei had completely undermined the dignity of all middle school teachers. Upon realizing the photo was of Aguri, Asano came to terms with it and felt sorry for her. She had boundless energy and passion for teaching, and with a few more years of experience, she could become an excellent teacher. When Asano learned that Koro-sensei could be saved, he sincerely invited him to stay and continue teaching. Koro-sensei was delighted by this, seeing it as the best recognition he could receive. However, he would only teach for 1 year. Even if he survived, he planned to travel the world. Dueling with Asano had been an honor and a great experience in his teaching career. Soon, Christmas Eve arrived, but the students were busy with entrance exams. Lonely, Koro-sensei could only express his sadness with tears. Akabane decided to stay at school to accomplish the feat of a poor student surpassing the top achievers. The expressions on Class A's faces when they saw him would surely be spectacular. However, the main reason was that Gakushu sparked his fighting spirit. Nagisa was preparing to enter the high school arranged by his mother. His talent for assassination did not meet the demands of the times, leaving him somewhat confused about his future. However, while tutoring Sakura, her words suddenly awakened him. From the start, Nagisa had been her teacher, and his teaching methods were excellent. Nagisa quickly realized that everyone's choices are greatly influenced by who they admire. Some admire doctors for their ability to save lives, others pursue the skills of an assassin, but he admired Koro-sensei. Determined, Nagisa entered the examination hall, where Koro-sensei, using a clone, cheered him on at the entrance. Valentine's Day soon arrived, eagerly anticipated for its tradition of giving gifts. Kayano had already prepared chocolates, but the thought of Nagisa made her blush uncontrollably. Akabane and Nakamura seized the opportunity to tease her and planned to play matchmaker for them, aiming to tease both at once. Kayano lacked experience in confessing her feelings. Akabane took her to observe others. Sugino was ecstatic after receiving chocolates from Yukiko, although they were just a token of friendship. Rinka made her chocolates into bullets as a gift for Chiba to practice with, a flirtatious gesture unique to them. Thus, the method of confession varies by person. As long as Kayano could muster the courage to speak her heart, she could definitely win Nagisa over. But first, they had to deal with the gossip-loving Koro-sensei. Kayano used Aguri's swimsuit photo to successfully immobilize Koro-sensei for half an hour. Afterwards, she found Nagisa to give him the gift, but became nervous facing him alone. She also suspected that Nagisa might become a teacher in the future, seeing his admiration when he looked at Koro-sensei. Noticing Koro-sensei distracted, Nagisa prepared to shoot him in a surprise attack, but was out of range. Seeing Nagisa's expression, Kayano finally understood why she had fallen for him. Before, when she had only thoughts of revenge after losing her relatives, it was Nagisa's sincere, murderous intent that warmed her heart. She was grateful for Nagisa's company over the past year, but her confession turned into encouragement, as she didn't want to distract him at a critical moment. Perhaps this was the best way to love someone. Meanwhile, Irina was on a date with Karasuma. After giving him a gift, she teased him, but Karasuma stood up to leave. Irina quickly apologized. Then she passed on the students' gifts to Karasuma, surprised at his popularity. She suspected it was because everyone thought this might be the last celebration on Earth. Irina revealed her true intention for the date. She knew that although Koro-sensei's chance of exploding was less than 1%, the higher-ups would not back down. Karasuma was unaware of the specific plan, but his superiors had made it clear that this was a joint effort by major international organizations. Irina thought that Earth's destruction might not be so bad, considering the students would feel defeated and lost if they failed to assassinate Koro-sensei. She couldn't bear the thought of Koro-sensei dying at someone else's hands. As a teacher in the assassination classroom, she was concerned about her students' futures. Karasuma commented that the current Irina was too emotionally driven to be a suitable assassin anymore. Irina immediately tried to prove herself, insisting that her decades of life should not be dismissed easily. She had been carrying a heavy burden of sin for 10 years and could no longer return to a normal life. All her experiences would serve as tools to pave new paths, a lesson taught to Karasuma by the students. He firmly believed that no matter the difficulty, the students would find appropriate solutions through their assassination experiences. He invited Irina to work at the Defense Department, where her expertise would be valuable even in peacetime. The people she would save would far outnumber those she had killed. Recently, all students in Class E passed their advancement exams, and Koro-sensei was immensely proud and planned to create a graduation album. Throughout the year, with his constant photobombing and candid shots, he had accumulated over 30,000 photos. The students swarmed to destroy their unflattering pictures, but they had to admit it had been a rich and unique year. After tearing up the photos, Koro-sensei immediately gathered everyone for more pictures, with various cosplay costumes appearing. The students realized that since February, Koro-sensei had been indulging them. Karasuma noted significant progress in everyone, which explained Koro-sensei's doting behavior. Nagisa asked Karasuma if he thought the classmates were qualified. Karasuma believed everyone was an excellent student. Later, Koro-sensei planned to take everyone for a global photo tour. Upon returning, Nagisa continued tutoring Sakura in her studies. Her grades were good enough to return to the regular class, but Sakura still feared being bullied. Nagisa immediately showed her his murderous intent, describing it as the sharpest dagger. He encouraged her that if she persevered, she too would possess a powerful weapon. Later, during a career counseling session, Nagisa stated that although he wasn't as fast or strong as Koro-sensei, he aimed to become a teacher like him. Koro-sensei fully supported this. They all shared a talent that was both universal and fleeting: youth. Koro-sensei advised not to stop and to keep moving forward while they still had their youth. After the counseling, Karasuma prepared to leave. During this time, Koro-sensei would stay in the classroom to create the graduation album. Karasuma hoped it would be an educational piece. After leaving, he immediately reported Koro-sensei's situation to his superiors. Satellites in space began to gather energy. A terrifying beam of light enveloped the entire classroom. This was a penetrating laser specifically targeting tentacled creatures, capable of dissolving them while passing through all obstacles, commonly known as the Spear of Heaven. However, Koro-sensei reacted quickly and narrowly escaped. Immediately afterwards, ground weapons were activated, emitting the same type of laser but designed to create a sealed area. Any tentacle contact would result in melting, affecting even beneath the ground, known as the Shield of Earth. Subsequently, the authorities publicized Koro-sensei's identity, portraying him as a monster-threatening student and capable of destroying the planet, making him unwelcome on Earth. The Spear of Heaven had only used 20% of its energy and would be fully operational in a week for a full-force strike. Meanwhile, the students were surrounded by the media, who they continuously rebutted, claiming all accusations against Koro-sensei were slander. However, no one believed them. Suddenly, Karasuma appeared and criticized the media for frightening middle school students to satisfy their curiosity. He then took the students away, advising them to leave the matter to the higher-ups. But the students couldn't accept this. They wouldn't give up on Koro-sensei even though troops filled the streets and hills. Karasuma felt it was best to give up. Nagisa disagreed. They hadn't even properly said goodbye to Koro-sensei. Karasuma pinned Nagisa to the ground, urging him to calm down as he was powerless against the top brass's plan. After Karasuma left, Nagisa decided they would handle the situation themselves. Meanwhile, the bored Koro-sensei was maintaining the classroom. As a super creature, he had never encountered fear, but now he longed to see his students again. Class E, undeterred, began to divide tasks and scout the terrain. Soon after, everyone donned their combat suits and rushed towards the assassination classroom, determined to meet Koro-sensei. Nakamura and two others led the charge, breaking through the soldiers' lines. Chiba and Rinka continually thwarted reinforcements with tranquilizer darts, while Yuzuki conducted stealth attacks. Akabane remained ruthless towards enemies. The group then used drone-acquired intelligence, smoke grenades, and stun guns to eliminate two squads. Higher-ups questioned Karasuma about the situation. He explained that Class E had trained in the mountains all year, making the area like their playground. The officials realized Karasuma had allowed this, but he denied it, insisting it was all voluntary by the students who would find ways to break through regardless. Under Akabane's leadership, Class E was unstoppable. The traps initially prepared for Koro-sensei now played a crucial role, causing heavy losses for the soldiers. At this moment, an officer spotted them. Despite facing a formidable opponent, no one gave up. The students launched a tag team attack. Nagisa seized an opportunity for a sneak attack, followed by Akabane's leg sweep, successfully defeating the opponent. The two even clapped in celebration. As the man attempted a counterattack, Ryoma and others quickly intervened, preventing any mishap. Soon after, all the soldiers were dealt with, and everyone successfully reached Koro-sensei after breaking through the Shield of Earth. The officer was furious, but Karasuma warned him against acting rashly, as Koro-sensei could threaten the students, leading to a tragedy. He suggested that he and Irina should try to persuade Koro-sensei. With no other options, the officer agreed to Karasuma's request. In 1 or 2 hours, the laser would fire, and not even a full defense mode could withstand it. Kurahashi suggested that Koro-sensei use them as hostages to escape. However, now that the whole world knew of his existence, there was no place for him on Earth. The students felt some regret. If they had come forward earlier to clarify or disable the device, the situation might have changed. Koro-sensei told them it was futile. Such actions would have made them look like threats and subjected them to strict surveillance. Moreover, the launch device was heavily guarded, even monitored by anti-aircraft weapons to prevent any sabotage. The plan was flawless, a culmination of the world's intellect and effort. Being targeted was an honor for him. Koro-sensei encouraged everyone that nothing in the world was in vain. Their past efforts allowed them to travel to space for answers and break through defenses to reach the assassination classroom. Their determination over the year to meet him, regardless of the risks, made him very happy as a teacher. Yet, Ryoma still didn't understand society. With only a 1% chance of Koro-sensei exploding, and they, being closest, were not afraid. Why couldn't others forgive Koro-sensei? Koro-sensei advised them again that in the future, they would surely be hindered by a powerful society and might not get their way. When that happens, they should not delve too deeply into questioning society, nor deny it, as it would only waste time. Instead, they should find ways to endure, settle themselves in the societal currents, and after many failures, they would surely find a satisfying outcome. At that moment, Nakamura opened her backpack and took out a cake specially prepared for today. It was the anniversary of Koro-sensei's meeting with Aguri, and also his birthday. They had come to celebrate Koro-sensei's birthday. The group then sang to celebrate the occasion. This gesture was incredibly precious to him. However, the cake was suddenly destroyed. Yanagisawa and the second Reaper chose this moment to cause trouble. The Reaper had been turned into a monster by Yanagisawa. Seeing his form, Koro-sensei felt guilty. Initially, he thought having a similar assistant would double the assassination efforts, so he took him as a disciple. To foster his loyalty, Koro-sensei continually demonstrated his power, making the Reaper realize the stark difference between them. However, constant denial spurred the Reaper to prove himself desperately. It was only now that Koro-sensei understood Aguri's words. The Reaper just wanted more attention from him. To the Reaper, Koro-sensei was not a qualified teacher. At this moment, the Reaper launched an attack. He had voluntarily undergone the transformation. His powerful tentacles, combined with his hatred, made his destructive power unimaginable. His basic capabilities were twice that of Koro-sensei. The major difference was that the Reaper's tentacles did not consider durability, unlike Itona and Kayano, who needed maintenance. Despite having only a 3-month lifespan, his energy was astonishingly strong, and his death posed no explosive threat, making him a perfect weapon. Kayano despised Yanagisawa for always using others while keeping himself out of harm's way. Yanagisawa responded to her directly with actions, injecting a serum into his neck while his other body parts had already been modified. He was prepared to die, as long as he could kill the one who took everything from him, no matter the cost. Now he could truly be called superhuman. He then teamed up with the Reaper, ready to fight and eliminate Koro-sensei, intending to inflict a wound on the students that would never heal. At that moment, Koro-sensei suddenly exerted his strength, successfully blocking the Reaper's tentacles. He used minimal force to make the Reaper's strike go astray, using sand to block the light and timing his moves to counter the attacks. He used skill to compensate for the difference in combat strength. Then, Koro-sensei prepared to face the Reaper one-on-one, hoping to bring his former student back on track through battle. Yanagisawa, however, had no place here, as the assassination classroom was meant for teaching and nurturing. Yet, Yanagisawa seized the opportunity to control the Reaper to attack the students. Koro-sensei had to use his body to block the damage. As long as Koro-sensei maintained his role as a teacher, this tactic would always work. The Reaper kept attacking the students, and Koro-sensei desperately defended against him. Soon, Koro-sensei was severely injured and began coughing up blood. Yanagisawa mocked him, saying this was the consequence of being with his students, who shouldn't have been there tonight. Karasuma drew his gun to warn Yanagisawa, but was knocked down by him. Yanagisawa continued to taunt the students, wanting to leave a lasting pain in their hearts, as they were Koro-sensei's greatest weakness. Seeing his students' guilty expressions, Koro-sensei immediately countered, saying the students risked their lives to save him and overcame various difficulties to see him. This process and their intentions were the best gifts for a teacher. Each of them was a student he was proud of, and protecting them was a teacher's natural duty. Hearing this, Yanagisawa prepared to eliminate Class E, intending to plunge Koro-sensei into misery as payback for his ruined life. Unexpectedly, Kayano intervened, successfully helping Koro-sensei out of his predicament. Just then, the Reaper launched a sneak attack, with Yanagisawa also starting to provoke. Kayano leapt up to attack the Reaper, but his tentacle pierced right through her body. Yanagisawa continued to make crude jokes, which completely ignited Koro-sensei's fury. Flames burst forth from within him, and his skin evolved into a black color, the most destructive form of the tentacle monster. Yanagisawa, seeing this, became extremely excited. Only by defeating Koro-sensei in this state could he feel satisfied. He then injected a serum into the Reaper, who instantly unleashed fierce flames. Nagisa urged everyone to seize the opportunity to leave, reminding them that escaping is also a tactic. The Reaper then launched a purple laser, which Koro-sensei countered with a burst of white energy, blending all the emotional energy he had accumulated so far. He was determined to ensure his students' safe graduation. The white energy burst, then engulfed Yanagisawa, and the Reaper's tentacles began to disintegrate. Koro-sensei reflected on his past with the Reaper, questioning if he really was a good teacher. He then plunged Kayano's dagger into the Reaper's body, avenging her and hoping to teach him better in the next life. Following this, the Reaper dissipated into the air, and Koro-sensei emerged victorious. However, there were no cheers, as Kayano was still unconscious. Koro-sensei asked Nagisa to hold Kayano. During the battle, he had already collected her blood and cells. He had been at a disadvantage earlier because he was using his tentacles to protect them. Now, he needed to reconnect each cell. He had been studying medicine all year to prevent a tragedy like Aguri's from happening again. If there were cells he couldn't repair, he would fill the gaps with his own mucus. In a few days, Kayano's cells would regenerate and replace his mucus. If needed, others could give blood to Kayano through him, and he could replenish his lost energy by eating cake. Soon, Kayano's wounds healed without any scars. Then he successfully restarted Kayano's heart with electric shock therapy. Seeing everyone happy, Koro-sensei internally asked Aguri if he was a qualified teacher now. Then, Koro-sensei collapsed, urging the students to act immediately. As assassins, they couldn't miss the opportunity when their target was weak. Their happiness was destined to be brief. Such is the nature of the assassination classroom. The students were reluctant, but the existence of the Spear of Heaven left them no choice. Dying at their hands was a unique bond they shared, everyone's wish, and the original intent of the assassination classroom. Isogai asked everyone to vote by raising their hands. Whether to let him go or to assassinate, they all chose to raise their hands. This was their answer. They wanted to maintain the bond between killer and target until graduation. Based on previous weaknesses, they held Koro-sensei's tentacles and aimed to stab his heart under his tie, fulfilling his wish. Nagisa stepped forward to accompany Koro-sensei on his final journey, and no one objected. After all, Nagisa was the undisputed main character in the assassination classroom. He then asked Karasuma and Irina if they wanted to join, highlighting it as a chance to share the bounty. Irina said she had already gained a lot, and that this moment belonged to Koro-sensei and the students alone. Koro-sensei hoped that after he was gone, Karasuma would not forget the students and continue to help them with their troubles. Karasuma promised him, stating he would never forget this year's experiences for the rest of his life. Finally, Koro-sensei wanted to say goodbye to everyone by calling roll, warning that no one should leave early or he would die unsatisfied. The roll call began, and everyone answered while looking into Koro-sensei's eyes, with many of the girls unable to stop crying. These young assassins were about to take a life, and from then on, they would surely understand the value of life more than anyone. They had studied hard, worried a lot, and thought deeply. They had given value to Koro-sensei's life as he had taught them, and they had taught him. He was content having laid the foundations for their future. He was happy this year and hoped his students would always be happy and pass on what they had learned to others, setting out on their own paths. Nagisa's hands began to tremble, and Koro-sensei extended a tentacle to calm him, advising him not to assassinate with such emotions. He wanted to see Nagisa smile as he faced the memories flooding back. Nagisa said goodbye to Koro-sensei, channeling his gratitude and regret into the dagger, like bowing in thanks, then plunged it into Koro-sensei's chest. Koro-sensei then turned into a light and dispersed above the assassination classroom. The students could no longer hold back their tears, and even the toughest among them, Akabane, began to sob uncontrollably. Tomorrow was their graduation ceremony, but they had already graduated from the assassination classroom a step early. After returning to the classroom, Koro-sensei had prepared a personalized guidance manual and graduation album for each student. Karasuma blocked the incoming troops outside, giving the students time to reminisce about Koro-sensei, as outsiders were not allowed in the classroom. When the students opened the manuals, it felt as if Koro-sensei was whispering advice in their ears. They spent a sorrowful night accompanied by Koro-sensei. When everyone woke up, Karasuma apologized, promising to handle the government and societal issues and to protect the students to the best of his ability. The students did not blame him, but hoped that Karasuma would take them to their graduation ceremony. The battle with the headquarters students was another cherished memory created with Koro-sensei. At this moment, both felt the true meaning of being teachers. They knew the students were still sad, but their smiling faces showed they had truly become stronger. The students then received their diplomas with determined looks. Asano knew this change in Class E was Koro-sensei's doing, pulling him back to his original path. Nagisa's parents came specifically to congratulate him. Koro-sensei had spoken to Nagisa's father, detailing Nagisa's progress and changes, hoping the parents would pay more attention to him. His mother also began to change, trying to reconcile with her husband to give Nagisa a happy family. Just then, the media burst in to interview Class E, but Karasuma stepped forward to stop them. Gakushu used the school flag to shield Class E, and with the help of the Big Five, they escorted them to the departing bus. Although there had been conflicts, they were still schoolmates. Afterwards, Gakushu declared a challenge to Akabane, eager to learn Koro-sensei's story. But Akabane was unafraid, as Class E never feared a challenge. Nagisa left the school in tears, knowing he would never again have such times. It was time to say a permanent goodbye to Class 3E. Soon after, the school faced severe criticism due to Koro-sensei's affairs, and Asano was forced to resign. However, his strong spirit remained unshaken. Unexpectedly, his former students came back to help, seizing the moment to repay their teacher. The 30 billion yen bounty was quickly deposited, and following Koro-sensei's instructions, the classmates set aside tuition and initial living funds, donating the rest to those in need. Karasuma's career also flourished as a result. The moon began to crumble soon after, slowly forming a smaller sphere under its own gravity, symbolizing the new moon of their year together. 7 years later, Irina had become Karasuma's bride. The classmates returned to the assassination classroom annually, as if Koro-sensei were still there. The hill behind the school remained busy with Hinata, the gymnastics teacher, training students, and Kurahashi taking children to experience nature. Other alumni thrived in their respective fields. Kayano became a distinguished actress. Okuda and Takabayashi developed a universal artificial blood. Sugino became a top university baseball player attracting scouts. Ryoma ventured into politics as a high-ranking official's secretary. Yoshida and Takuya took over their family businesses, and Itona helped in his family's factory. Ritsu connected globally with computers, securing a strong online presence, enriching her emotions, and aiding Class E immensely. Akabane passed the civil service exam, moving closer to his goals. They all believed that whatever paths they chose, Koro-sensei would support them, and his teachings would remain in their hearts forever, a legacy left behind. As for Nagisa, he still had the height of a middle school student. Meanwhile, Akabane had grown to 185 centimeters. This made teaching challenging for him as he faced discrimination from students, some even threatening to kill him if he gave orders. This threat, like a spell, instantly ignited Nagisa's fighting spirit. His killer move reappeared, swiftly subduing the mischievous students. He told them he hoped someone would manage to kill him before graduation.